This man is called Mr. Fashionista. Animals, monsters, poisonous creatures, and even a human should never touch any living thing up to the point of becoming. This is because he can replicate that characteristic by swallowing. And every time he swallows something, his body changes. That is how he earned the infamous name Mr. Passiby. He hunted and devoured exotic beasts from all over the world, making their power his own. He became a master of illegal smuggling and earned a huge fortune. However, years of escape. In the end, international special forces finally corner him in the African jungle. The hunting partner he trusted was Jamie Myingwan, who had earned his trust for half a year. The armed unit put him on the Benet, convinced that escape was impossible in this situation, yet they had no idea what kind of monster they had captured. His muscles twisted, his skin changed, and his teeth sharpened, transforming him into a true beast. The world's greatest phenomenon in seconds. The wanted criminal becomes a predator that cannot be stopped even by bullets. And when the dust has settled, at that time, everyone in the van was dead. Mr. Passep returns to his human form and looks around. With superhuman senses, he feels that something is very wrong. Kim bursts out of his stomach and witnesses 2 moons floating in the sky. At that moment, he realizes that he no longer remembers Earth. Suddenly, he hears a sound. It seems a pack of wolves is approaching him. Being a beast himself, Kim thought he knew instinctively which opponent's wild animals should avoid, but he might not. As the wolves reveal Songen and leap at him, Kim grinds his teeth and transforms into a lion. However, the wolves do not stop even when they see the predator right in front of them. The lion does not catch one of them. Now the other wolves run away. Grumbling, Kim finally gets to eat a meal for the first time in a while and takes a bite of the wolf. It is his first taste here. The moment the lion thrusts its snail into the wolf, it fails to pierce the hide and transforms into a hippopotamus. Kim, who finished his meal leaving only bones, was that ordinary. Wolf skins were difficult to obtain even with hippopotamus teeth, and even with shark teeth. I ponder the fact that I was barely able to tear it. Aside from the unusually tough wolf skin, what confused him most was that the wolves offered no resistance to his suckling. Scientifically, Mayu had to weaken it by vibrating its muscles, and a wolf of that size should have hesitated for a moment. Kim, who possessed at least a modicum of common sense, looked at the 2 moons and thought that common sense did not apply here. For a moment. Afterwards, the protagonist breaks the remaining bones several. Moreover, these animals are not much different from animals on Earth. He did not, and Kim sets out on an exploration to find a certain common sense that will make everything unique to this world possible. He turns his hands into wolf paws, discovers humans in the forest, and deduces that there are humans in this world as well. Kim sets out on an exploration to regain his common sense regarding his machine, believing that he can obtain information in this world. He sneaks up behind and grabs the human with his huge wolf claws. Kim has the ability to directly apply any body part he has eaten to his own body. He reveals that although he has this ability, he cannot use it whenever he wants due to many restrictions. He adds that he cannot use parts of creatures with very different body structures, such as lobsters or jinhi, nor can he apply duplicate techniques. The protagonist tries to converse with humans, but with a head like a plum blossom, he cannot speak like a human. It is impossible. Humans are Kim's terrible. He runs away in terror at the sight. However, the strange creature catches him with its claws. Kill without thinking. As the human was soaked and about to say something, Kim-un, he realizes that he speaks a different language. Looking at the helpless human lying there, the protagonist had neither the means nor the motive to help him, and even if he had been alive, communication would have been impossible. It may seem cold-hearted, but Kim considers himself a completely different species from this human and feels nothing. In this situation, they devise a plan to devour humans as a faster way to obtain information. Kim's ability seems to allow him to transform a part of his brain into that of the creatures he has eaten, enabling him to access their memories. In the end, thanks to his abilities and the involuntary cooperation of humans, the protagonist learns the language used in this world. He, who had even taken human clothes, died. He hits the jackpot by discovering a monster encyclopedia among the man's belongings. Using the encyclopedia, Kim was able to identify which monsters and systems existed in this world. He believed that through these systems, he could achieve the ultimate dream he had given up on Earth. 2 months later, the protagonist learns about the troll's regenerative ability. Even if he crushed the troll's hunting brain, the troll could regenerate within a month. Thinking this information was more than what was in the encyclopedia, he struck the troll with a wolf's claw, and the troll. He wakes up with only the troll's face inside the bucket and his body left outside. This cruel. The girl seems to be checking how long she needs to burn to peel off the skin. Kim speculates that there are still many things to test, wondering if the troll has no resistance to acid or poison and to what extent its body can regenerate. He approaches the troll with a look of fear in his eyes as he ponders what kind of experiment he should perform on this creature. future. After acquiring all his creatures, he dreams of becoming the most powerful creature in history. The next scene takes place in the Onyx Orc tribe of the Great Northern Forest, where a warrior meets Onyx. The warrior informs him of a prophecy that a monster will be born in Decem Nim, devour all living creatures it encounters, and destroy their skills. He reveals that he will absorb and use it, claiming that he will become the most powerful monster. We briefly saw the sight of a beast that looked like steam swallowing a troll. You get to see it. The next scene moves into Decem's troll territory and troll. I see the leader examining the human footprints he just discovered. It seems they realize that someone is devouring the humans all by themselves and are looking for someone. The leader orders his subordinates to find the humans before only bones remain. Surprisingly, they follow the footprints, which lead to a cave where Kim is torturing a poor troll. A troll sensed a strange atmosphere and smelled a human. I'll tell the boss, but the boss is busy thinking that this is the GD that the guys they were looking for plotted to monopolize humans. Suddenly, I smell the troll's blood, but the boss reacts. The protagonist appears from the cave earlier. With his animal instincts, the troll leaders. As he kills them, he realizes that he can no longer use them as test subjects. The trolls are confused as they witness their leader dying before their eyes and see a monster with troll muscles and the father of a big bear. One of them attacks the monster, but his hand is fatally severed and he is paralyzed, unable to move his body. Kim, who has been experimenting for a long time, has discovered that paralyzing trolls is the best way to render their rapid regenerative abilities useless. A troll screams in terror and tries to warn his fellow trolls to run away, but the protagonist ensures they are all killed. And it turns out that Kim discovered something new called a skill in the monster encyclopedia. At first, I thought of this encyclopedia as something like a game, but in this world, the things he ate used skills and abilities similar to them. Kim, having come to believe that skills exist, discovers several important facts through experiments. First, the viper's deadly nerve paralyzes its prey. Just like using a poison skill, skills do not work on creatures without skills. It does not work on him. The poison only left physical wounds. Second, attacks that are not skills also affect opponents who possess skills. For example, when Poison Skill and Viper Songan attacked the large Songam's arm, both were able to paralyze the bear. The reason the Steel Wolves, who possess immunity to third-party debuffs, were intimidated by his Poyo is likely due to his Tiger Poyo, rather than any other animal in this world. In other words, although they are immune to his skills because Kim came from Earth, his attacks are fatal to them. Therefore, he can become the top predator here. This is because humanity dominates the Earth. No matter what organism is consumed, science and weapons are the organisms. You cannot defeat humanity because you easily transcend limits. On the other hand, in this world, there are countless powerful monsters that eat humans and nuclear bombs, and science does not exist. In other words, there is nothing to stop him. Kim has dreamed of becoming the best predator since he was young. To achieve his goal, he must do a troll with infinite regeneration abilities and immense power. It is just devouring the creatures living here, such as monsters that breathe fire like dragons. The next moment, someone born as slime capable of swallowing anything. I wonder if this fantasy world is the same as what I saw in comics. It is a plan by God to make himself the strongest. Thinking, the sticky creature opened the status window and it seems like they use their souls to check skills, eating and possessing anything. Just then, a few pairs crawl out of the bush and the slime swallows them. As a result of predation, he gains the ability to use paralyzing poison skills, causing his soul to decrease. Ignoring his shrinking soul, the slime considers itself the protagonist and devours as many creatures as possible. It seems the reason this poor man had to suffer abuse in the past was because he met incompetent parents. Clearly, the slime possesses abilities comparable to a monster and will gradually consume its soul, eventually destroying itself. Ultimately, the goddess of Elmud chooses him as a disposable item rather than the protagonist. In the next scene, we see Elamud under the protection of the goddess and the warrior chosen by the goddess. The hero was once killed by a monster, and due to the destruction caused by that monster, it seems that he met a terrible death because of it. That monster, possessing overwhelming power, brought catastrophe to the entire world. Events took an unexpected turn, and the hero appeared to have returned to himself from 10 years ago. He thought this. I realized that this was the last chance the goddess gave me to stop that monster. As he began to speak about divine revelation, a lightning-like pain struck him. He wonders if it is because he lied or as punishment for disobeying the hero's orders. The elder is curious about the posting he is talking about and asks for more information. At that time, the hero will tell him that a monster will be born that eats and absorbs skills, and that he himself. I am here to let you know that I am here to stop the actions of that evil beast in the future. The elder confirms that this is a serious problem and mentions the trolls that have been missing for the past 2 months. He concludes that the monster is targeting the troll's regenerative ability, a unique skill. The elder adds that if they find the troll now, they might be able to find the monster's lair the hero is looking for. The hero clenches his fist and vows that this time, things will not go according to the monster's plan. On the other hand, Kim has been experimenting on trolls and living. One of them looks like it is begging to be killed. While all the other trolls were dying from experiments, the protagonist, who had gathered enough information about trolls, finally, he decides to kill him. When he tries to kill a troll, he learns from the encyclopedia that boiling the troll's blood can be used as a healing weapon. So Kim spared the troll's life to torture him again. The poor monster curses him and begs to be killed. After that, he continued to read books. While reading, I discover a forest lizard man, a fascinating species with a unique human-like appearance. The lizard man, an intermediate form between mammals and reptiles, fascinated. The protagonist smiles like a devil, as if he has found new prey. Shortly after, in the late zone of Daysam, a lizard man. Upon discovering a troll-like creature in their territory, they wonder where it was hiding, since no one has seen it recently. Meanwhile, one of them threatens the troll who dared to enter their territory. The monster approaches the troll, witnesses a massive creature with a snake's head and troll's hands, and realizes that it is a very terrifying being. Before the lizard men can flee, our ruthless protagonist grabs the neck and easily swallows it whole. While the other lizard men felt disgust, he also witnessed a strange creature, and they realize that if they let this creature live, their own species will be in danger. However, when he tries to kill the monster, the lizard man is astonished to see Kim's regenerative ability to heal his wounds in an instant, and he brutally kills the lizard men with the poison of his own kind. The scene shifts to a slime monster, and he ate an October. After crying, he doesn't discover anything special about the October cave. Smelling the scent of blood spreading throughout, the slime entered the cave, used the steel wolf skill to examine it more closely, and discovers a lizard man corpse. Thinking he was lucky, the slime devours all the corpses and believes he has hit the jackpot. As he slurps down his food, he gains 3 new abilities from the lizard man, and at that moment a hero appears behind him. The slime looked back at the deal, spotted a human standing there, and said to the hero. He asks what his identity is. Believing he came here after sensing traces of a troll and detecting an evil aura, the hero is shocked to see a small slime. While the slime asks who on earth it is, the hero, he senses evil and concludes that it is not an ordinary slime, but a creature of pure evil. Revealing himself, the human declares that he is a hero. Upon hearing this, the slime, who seemed obsessed with becoming the protagonist, the hero, he assumes that he came as a sacrifice to aid his slow growth. After all, even in the anime, he starts by eating a dragon. The slime seems disappointed to see the trashy hero. While the hero is convinced that the sticky creature is insulting him, the slime recalls that the hero is chosen by the goddess and insults them by calling them trash. Bad-mouthing the goddess, the slime calls the goddess of this world a fool and offers her a spot in the harem he will create in the future. As soon as these words burst out of his mouth, the hero does not seem to take it well. Many people regarding themselves and their parents. They insulted her, but not a single person insulted the goddess who created the continent of Elmud. That no one should insult the goddess. Claiming, the hero draws his sword. Seeing how the slime asks the hero if he is joking and makes it clear that it is the protagonist, it seems like it wants to die. Wondering what title I would get if I killed the hero, the arrogant creature decides to eat her and steal her skills. As the slime attacks the hero, she cut it with her sword, the slimes. It is speculated that if the mucus disappears, what was lost cannot be regenerated. However, since this slime is a monster, it regenerates very quickly thanks to the abilities of the troll it absorbed. Seeing the slime regenerate, the hero becomes convinced that the slime will become the future sacrificial offering. Swinging her sword with extreme force, she calls him a monster of destruction. With the power of great judgment, strike down the sword, making the slime scream in pain. The scene shifts to Kim, who explains that animals cannot use human language due to their head structure. However, after eating a lizard man, he became able to speak at the same level as a human, even with the head of a reptile. This is because parts of reptiles and mammals are interchangeable. Kim, needing more, appears before the lizard men. At first, they perceive him as dynamic. The moment they realize he is not a lizard man but another creature, they attack him. But as a tool made for them, the powerful monster is all the lizard men. He kills it. Meanwhile, the hero walks away thinking the slime is dead, but the slime is back in a severe state. It appears to be recovering slowly due to the damage. I needed something to provide energy immediately. The slime goes into the cave, and a short while later, the protagonist returns after finishing the hunt. Seeing that all his food is gone, Kim is shocked and wonders who did this. Curious, we finally discover a slime creature. We then move on to the slime's backstory. He was originally human and nothing. People called him a lazy bum because he was faithful answerable only to his instincts, such as not trying to do anything. In other words, this guy was useless trash. He was even abandoned by his parents at the age of 40 because he was fat and unemployed. He blames them for not fulfilling their duties, saying that he didn't want parents who were dirt poor anyway. The story takes a turning point when this fat man somehow ends up here and is reborn as the most powerful slime. Well, that's what this guy thinks anyway. He wants to. He was convinced that he was the chosen one and the protagonist of this place. Returning to the present, the slime is currently in a miserable state because of the hero. He considers this a challenge to himself and resolves to take revenge after devouring all the skills in this world. Just then, Kim arrives and Slime, overjoyed to see the prey right in front of him, jumps at him. The protagonist tells the story of what happened over the past 2 weeks, starting with the bad news. The slime that came in while he was hunting the lizard men. The laboratory could no longer be used because it contaminated everything inside. However, the good news is that when the slime attacked him, it entered his mouth and he absorbed all of its skills. According to the encyclopedia Kim possesses, slimes change their form and evolve depending on what they regularly eat. Initially, the protagonist could not consume minerals, but the slime's diet is not limited to living creatures. This means that since Kim, the most powerful monster, has already absorbed the slime, he can now eat metal and transform into metal. The next scene is Nim to the land of the dragon, to this cave. I see the gliding motion returning. The dragon lives alone and has a title received from the creatures that serve it called Hacha. The lizard men worship the dragon and call her Scarlet Blaze, who illuminates the sky. The dragon has offspring and cherishes them very much. It seems so, the worshippers, to her. She offers treasures, and in return, she provides them with prosperity and protection. Although the dragon neglected its duties since the offspring were born, heading toward the lizardman's territory, the battle, witnessing the traces, the intruder. I wonder if it has come in. The dragon is enraged and decides to make everyone who harms the creatures protected by the great Scarlet Blaze pay the price. Meanwhile, Kim seems busy thinking about the mucus covering the lizardman's scales, which acts as both a disinfectant and an antibiotic. The mucus covering the scales and slime is made up of the same type of mucus, so if he eats durable metal and turns the slime into metal slime, he will undoubtedly become stronger. While pondering where to find such metal, he surveys his surroundings with a hawk's eye and looks down at the orc formation of Sam, the most powerful tribe. Judging that it would be difficult to deal with the strong orc of mine name, he thinks of another way to infiltrate their territory. Just then, a red dragon flies over him. It attracts his attention. Thanks to the lizardman's memories, he knows that the dragon has offspring. Using his ability, he can alter the brains of the animals he eats to examine their memories. However, since altering the entire brain would result in the loss of senses, he only alters a part of it. According to his book, dragons have a habit of protecting their young, and the protagonist is, without even needing to step forward himself, the little bastard, come up with a wicked idea to provoke the dragon. The mother dragon stockpiles food for her young. He instructs the baby dragon to wait quietly until he returns. The bewildered baby dragon asks its mother when it can go outside, but the dragon warns them not to even think about going out when it is not home. Afterwards, the dragon activates barrier magic for the safety of the hatchling and leaves to save the situation. The scene is 30 minutes after the dragon leaves. Returning to the past, Kim was standing near the dragon's habitat and, surprisingly, thanks to the lizardman's memory, you can easily find the way to the dragon's cave. He was holding to check if the barrier magic had been activated. Throws dead influence, and as expected, the influence burns up and falls. He knew of the existence of the barrier thanks to the lizardman's memories. The protagonist also knows that the magic does not work on people from Earth. The dragon, as soon as he leaves, he complains about how high this place is and enters the cave where the baby dragon is. He transforms the lower teeth into a deadly village, a red bean, and pieces of other Earth animals sufficient to deceive the barrier, making it look like a dragon. The baby dragon that fell into the airport asks the intruder in front of it for their identity, but the intruder appears engrossed in checking the collection of springs owned by the dragon. This makes the baby dragon bright so that he attacks Kim and tells him to leave. But the poor bastard was thrown to that monster. She collapses, calling for her mother. A week later, the mother dragon returns home frustrated, unable to figure anything out. Suddenly, she notices that her cub is not running towards her as usual and pays attention. While looking around, I discover the lifeless body of a baby lying on the ground. The terrified dragon is all recovery, use healing magic to check if the baby is okay, and finally succeed. After she comforted the baby dragon and asked what happened, the baby cried and revealed that a creature with protruding lower teeth had injured it and that the intruder had taken all the food its mother had gathered. Upon hearing the cub's description of protruding teeth and red skin, she immediately realizes that only orcs in Sam have such an appearance and is convinced that they are the culprits who harmed harmed the cub. She resolved to make them pay the price and was filled with rage. Crying out satisfies the protagonist, who was waiting for a reaction. Meanwhile, in orc territory, an orc reports to the elder about something suspicious he discovered while on duty. After investigating it, the elder must wonder how such a valuable artifact could be found covered in blood in the bushes. He becomes even more confused when it is revealed that it is dragon blood. However, before they can take any other action, the enraged dragon flies over them, preparing for revenge. Upon discovering that the blood on the sword is that of its own offspring, the dragon goes into a frenzied rage and attacks everything in its path. Startled by the sudden attack, the orcs involuntarily gather all the orcs in the forest and realize that this is a trap. It is revealed that the battle continued for 3 days. The orcs were victorious, but countless orcs died, and the surviving orcs left the great forest, leaving the dragon behind as prey for the monster. Meanwhile, the baby dragon realizes that its mother is no longer there and, in anger, grinding teeth, they leave the nest. Returning to the protagonist, he recalls everything he has endured until now. Wolf, troll, lizard man. It included orcs, dragons, and various other monsters mentioned in the book. As a result, he leaves the forest, having no more work to do. Afterwards, he rides on a merchant's back, having told him that Kim had been injured in the forest and lost his memory. The merchant, appearing to be a good person, tells him about herbs that restore youth, rare monster items, and the secrets of an ancient kingdom. For these reasons, everyone comes to this forest, but most either die or, if they are lucky, end up like Kim. Kim is on the way to the village. He learns a great deal about the forest and comes to understand everything except the status window. It is said that the status window is common knowledge in this world and provides information about the user's life. He tries to open the status window, but when it fails to open for some reason, he thinks it might be because he is not from this place. Later, they went to the village. Upon arrival, the merchant drops him off and leaves. Kim admires the city of Santo Canargo. It looked much bigger and cleaner than I thought. Kim thinks that civilization has advanced quite a bit as he reads posters urging people to wash their hands to prevent disease and information about individual lives. Just then, he overhears two people talking about how strangely clean this city is. One of them says that the reason only the area near the palace is this clean is because Prince Jay grew up here and that lives are disease, and they whisper that the first person to think there was a connection was none other than the prince. The man concludes that the prince accomplished all of this before the age of 10. She thinks of him as a genius and wants to meet him at the coming-of-age ceremony next month. Our protagonist, who had been listening to the entire conversation, noted that the concept of life had only emerged on Earth in the 20th century, as this civilization looked like the Middle Ages, like himself, speculating that there might be other humans with memories of Earth. He wants to meet the prince. Due to an unexpected turn of events, our protagonist soon meets the prince, and it was none other than Eddie Montoya, the partner who had betrayed him and been devoured by Kim. It is revealed that Eddie Montoya was his real name before his reincarnation. He was a second-generation American-born Latino to immigrant parents. This man was of the elite. He lived his life as an investigator for the International Special Police Organization and a secret agent for the CIA. However, his life met an unexpected end after encountering a cruel monster, and thus his life came to an end. What he didn't know was that a new world exists after death. When he opened his eyes, he had become a child again. His name was Edward, and surprisingly, he was the second prince of the Grand Kanthi Kingdom. Surprisingly, his second life was easy. He somehow utilized his knowledge from Earth to rule this place, which was a godlike power in this primitive world. He introduced hygiene science and astronomy, and thanks to the training he received as an elite, nothing was impossible for him. However, Edward was not born a commoner. Had he been, no one would have taken him seriously, and he was born of royalty. Furthermore, the eldest son does not inherit the throne. Therefore, it was only a matter of time before Edward became king. While the crowd cheered for the second prince, he dreams of becoming the king of this world. The scene is to Lord Santok Hanargo's mansion. Lying in bed after the change, Prince Edward complains about his tiring day, saying that forcing a smile is harder than he thought. Suddenly, he heard a creaking sound from the window. He hears and sees a huge lizard breaking into his room. Terrified, Edward draws his sword and asks who on earth he is. He immediately recognizes that it is a lizard man and is surprised, wondering how a lizard man was able to enter the mansion and break through the barrier magic. Just then, the lizard man greets the prince and returns to his original form. Do you remember him? When asked, Edward remembers that he is the damn monster Pashobi and falls into a state of panic. Enough to die. The terrified poor man could not believe the sight before his eyes and thought it must be a nightmare. He collapses to the floor and faints. While Kim was thinking it was more dramatic than expected, he knocks on the door and calls Edward on the phone. A servant came in and saw him asleep, and I look at the big teddy bear. Never Nevertheless, the servant draws a knife to kill the prince, who appears to have lost consciousness. And just as he is about to stab the prince, someone grabs his hand. Turning around, it was not a doll, but a real, monstrous giant bear. The startled man was terrified to the point of death, and Kim embraced him, telling him to die in his place. As a loud noise echoed throughout the mansion, other guards rushed into the prince's bedroom. As more guards stormed the room and witnessed the giant bear, our protagonist realized that things were escalating. The guards, revealed to be assassins, switch to the rain and they decide to kill both the prince and the monster. Meanwhile, the man from earlier gets slammed into the wall. Kim thinks he can easily handle these guys, but if he calls in more guards, things will get complicated. Thinking of escaping, the bear grabs the prince and jumps out the window. As the poor prince falls to the ground, Kim, who did not want to be inhumane, he decides to save and spare his life for now and runs away with Edward. Meanwhile, someone at the mansion was writing a letter when he was interrupted by the guard's report that the prince had been kidnapped by a monster. Slamming his hand on the desk, the man, he must wonder, as if in disbelief, how the prince could be kidnapped in Santo Canargo. He orders the guards to gather all their forces and rescue the prince by any means necessary. Kim, who was fleeing with Prince, who was chased by many people and ended up in the city bar. Edward, who had been sitting on the hill, finally wakes up and is shocked again by the sight of Kim, realizing that it was not a dream. The poor man faints once more, and Kim makes a face that shows he is fed up with this dramatic guy. Afterwards, Edward and Kim should be puzzled and bewildered as to how they came to this world. When Kim asks suspiciously why he was in this world, Edward is consumed by fear, thinking that this guy plans to kill him again if he finds out the secret of his resurrection. However, our protagonist reassures him that he has no plans to kill him, and Edward asks if that is a promise. Saying that he cannot promise anything, Kim reminds him that he has already paid the price for his betrayal. Eddie gets a shiver down his spine recalling the terrible death and, suspecting that he intends to kill the others who betrayed him, clearly states that he will not help him. However, at that time, Kim says it is unfair that he only killed Eddie and his squad, while General Lighting and the others who participated in the plan are still alive. Like a sharp monster, he persuades Eddie by saying that both of them are gone now. Those people must have stolen the ball. Hitting the nail on the head, Kim reminds him that everyone except him is doing well. As planned, this provokes Eddie. He reflects on how hard he worked to capture the fashionable, yet the fact that he is the only one trapped in this barbaric world. Abandoning his past as Eddie Montoya, he now realizes that he is Prince Edward Grand Canton of the continent of Elmud. I agree to cooperate with Kim, keeping in mind. As they shake hands, the clever Edward learns about Kim's goal. He believes that Kim's objective is to return to Earth and kill those who betrayed him. Therefore, if a way to bring him back is found, Kim will kill them on his behalf, and this world will become safe. It is, while the prince allows Kim to take on a supporting role in this massive plan. The protagonist thinks that having Edward by his side would be helpful. Since he is a prince, the quality of information would be much improved. It goes without saying that he might even be able to find a way to return to Earth. It seems these two guys plan to use each other. Afterwards, Kim informs Edward about his assassination, and the prince speculates that it was the old man's doing. Let's assume our protagonist accepts it better than expected. Edward, he says he is used to this kind of work. Then, the prince stands up and announces that he has a coming-of-age ceremony to attend, adding that his status is important if Kim wants his help. The next scene continues with the story of King Edward the Great, the first king, who stayed at an inn on the outskirts of Canargo 300 years ago during a hunting trip. It is revealed that the king was deeply impressed by the innkeeper's service and bestowed the title of baron upon him. This marked the beginning of the Santa Canargo Hotel and the source of power for the Canargo Baron family. With the support of the royal family, the baronial house of Canargo grew into one of the 5 most powerful families on the continent. As long as the crown existed, the baron's family would prosper. And on the day the royal family fell, the Canargo family would follow suit. Later, one of the assassins plans to find and assassinate the prince. At that moment, one of the guards reports to the old man that he has found the prince's location, and he orders the guard to bring the prince to the mansion. The man who tried to assassinate the prince already seemed terrified, but the guard, he reveals that the prince has come in person. Seeing the prince standing at the door with Kim, the old man, asking if the transfer was okay, he said he would get it for him soon. He says, however, the prince orders the troops to withdraw. He gives an order and reveals that he was attacked by an assassin last night. He confesses that he saved the life of his secret guardian knight, Kim Deokbun, despite the blizzard. Unfortunately, they had to flee, pushed back by the attackers, and the old man, flustered, asks if he is sure. However, the assassin warns the old man not to be deceived, stating that it is clear the kidnapper threatened the prince. Hearing this, Edward asks if he is saying that he fabricated all of this. He mutters and shouts his name, Edward Grand Canteen, a descendant of King Edward the Great and the successor to that title. Reminding them of his identity, the prince makes it clear that he is not someone who would yield to threats and fail to defend his position, as they had thought. Let's read the very act of harboring such thoughts as treason. The old man is shocked by the prince's attitude. He deduces that although the knight's gambit looks crude, seeing the red dragon scales underneath, he is not an ordinary kidnapper. Then the prince orders the soldiers to arrest the old man and his men. As they are armed, Edward approaches one of the assassins. The Camargo family, one of the 5 most powerful families in the kingdom, reveals that they know all the kingdom's secrets that others do not. He grabs his shoulder and says that one of them is torture. With a wicked smile, the prince assures the assassin that he will not die a peaceful death. The assassin is terrified to the point of losing his mind and thinks about how perfect his plan was. Just then, the prince's secret knight approaches them, and the assassin blames him for everything and asks who he is. Then Kim takes off his gambit and reveals the bear's face. While the assassin recognizes that he is the same bear from earlier, Kim winks at him, and the poor man is dragged away by the guards, calling him a monster. The girl explains that she stole old pieces of gambit from a nearby village and found a log. He applied gambit's slime mucus and turned it into mystium. It was what he had eaten in the dragon's nest. The slime was more useful than expected because it tricked the Baron in that way, making him believe it was a secret guardian knight. As a result, the Baron believed that the traitors confessed after being tortured and that they were of death. He says that he revealed his secret identity while calling them lions, thinking that the villains were pretending to be the prince's attendants, the Baron. He asks Kim Kyung if she knows anything about them. Kim tells him what she discussed with Edward and decides to piece together the story. He tells the Baron that he heard about them last night and goes further to confess that the second queen, Eve Rose, was not killed by illness but was actually poisoned. Upon hearing this news, the Baron loses his reason and, enraged, prepares to make those who killed the queen pay the price. However, in the blink of an eye, our protagonist goes behind him and, on his shoulder, he places his hand on them and warns them not to underestimate them, saying they are assassins of the second-year high school students. The old man senses his strange power and is terrified as if he were going to die. Meanwhile, Kim said that since the prince had found a clue, it would be handled well. He persuades the Baron to entrust this task to him. As our protagonist is about to leave, the old man begs him to protect the prince, and the knight reassures him that he can trust him and thinks that he will keep the prince alive until everything is resolved. Later, Kim and Eddie seem to be traveling somewhere in a carriage. During the journey, our protagonist asks his partner about the clues they found regarding the Grim Reaper. The prince announces that it was a lie, says that he does not need a clue because he already knows who they are, and adds that he is going to the very place where they are right now. Kim seems curious. Edward says that it will be much more exciting and that he will meet the ringleader when he returns to the capital. Then, he asks Kim about what he wanted to ask earlier. Kim is confused about the status window and asks the prince about it. Our protagonist speculates that it is because he is not from this world, while Edward finds it strange since he also possesses a status window. The prince then explains that the status window is not limited to humans but is possessed by all living things on this continent. Additionally, one can view another person's status window using the identity verification skill. Edward says that he also possesses that skill and saw Kim's status window when he used it on him earlier. To verify, the prince checks the identity again, uses a skill but cannot see Kim's status window. After being lost in thought, he asks Kim to transform into another animal, saying he has something to check. Our protagonist is a gray bear. He transforms, but the prince stops him and tells him to transform into a creature of this world instead. As soon as Kim transformed into an orc, Edward, upon witnessing his status window, he concludes that it does not work because Kim is from Earth. However, it works if he transforms into something of this world. In the meantime, they used lizardman claws, troll skin, and deadly beans. Test all monsters like Songan of the Tough Wolf and the status window. The process is repeated until it no longer changes. The prince is our protagonist. He makes a shocked expression upon seeing that he had eaten quite a feast there. A few days later, they finally arrive at their destination, and the prince warns our protagonist not to be too surprised, as he is not sure if he is ready to fight the leader of the assassins. Upon arriving at the entrance of the castle, the gate opened, and they witnessed the king himself, the leader of the assassins. Kim couldn't help but be shocked when the prince greeted his father. The king seems to know what happened to the prince and rejoices that he has returned safely. However, the king is lost in thought about this little rat that escaped death. Edward tells his father that everything is thanks to the servants he assigned him. Thinking that the servants were closer to assassins, Kim could feel the tense atmosphere flowing between the father and son. Then the king called Kim Jae-young and said that he had never heard of the title Secret Guardian Knight in his personal inventory. He speaks. As tension escalates, Kim wonders if the king is trying to threaten him, but the protagonist maintains birth, and the king is, as if impressed by him. He says that he has the guts befitting a knight. He tells Edward that night. He asks him to give him a gift, but the son apologizes and explains that he must refuse his offer for 2 reasons. The prince reveals 2 reasons, one of which is that Kim Jae-young is not an item to be given as a gift, and since Kim is his friend, he cannot possess him. Then he confesses that he is best friends with Kim Jae-young, and although he is the second prince without an older brother, they are brothers. They swore to become brothers. Smiling broadly, Edward patted Kim's shoulder, and it seemed like both of them were perfectly pulling off the act of brothers. However, the king strikes the prince's hand, and as he looks at the brothers, his rage surges, and he orders both of them to disappear from his sight. Afterwards, Prince Edward drinks wine and thanks his brother Kim. Drunk, he laughs hysterically at having frightened his father by saying that an unidentified knight covered in mystium, the kingdom's secret resource, had wandered in through the orbit. He thanks Kim for allowing him to humble an old man for the first time and gives him a set of magically enchanted gabots. When our protagonist speculates that he had never defeated an old man before, Edward agrees and reveals that his father has been training high-ranking men from all over the country since he turned 10. After teaching them basic servant duties and having them gather intelligence and carry out assassinations, he planted these trained subordinates in the royal court to use his. It is used to remove any obstacles on the road. He adds that the old man was able to take over the king's position through such transmission, even though he was merely a son-in-law in the line of succession. Enraged, Edward smashes a wine glass claiming he came up with the idea first and calls the old man a bastard. Afterwards, the wicked prince informs the king of his older brother and feels relieved, but behind that calm expression, he suspects that the old man almost wet his pants. Meanwhile, he is very happy about having done such a thing to his father. Someone rushes into the room. She is his younger sister, and she runs toward Edward, complaining that he was rude to their father. However, Kim Kyung blocks her path and orders her not to move. The princess gets angry at the knight, but Kim is very serious at this place. He clearly states that this is the prince's private quarters and that she has trespassed without knocking. As she attempts to talk back, Kim draws his sword, aims it straight at her neck, and declares that he will not ask a second time. Trembling with fear, the princess falls to the floor, and at that moment, Edward. He runs to his younger sibling and asks if they are okay. Edward becomes the kindest man in the world and runs after his younger sister Eleanor, who is usually so pushy. He takes her back to her room and says they will talk later. As soon as he closes the door, he calls her a vile bitch. After that, Kim asks if she is his sister, and Edward reveals that his sister has been granted the power of a goddess and adds that she will be the first to be eliminated when he becomes king. Then, it is revealed that Eleanor Grand Canteen is the youngest of the 3 surviving children of the current Gugwang Edward SASE. The princess received from the goddess the power to go wherever she wanted, but Eleanor is in love with Edward, the reincarnation of Eddie Montoya, and he is her half-brother. Thinking the situation is absurd, our protagonist asks out of curiosity if he likes the princess too, but Edward, who seems to have lost his reason, tells her to stop the disgusting jokes. Then the prince reminded him of the second queen, the venomous snake, who had invited him to a deadly party by Queen Everest, that is, the first queen, the mother of his younger sister. Orders. Well, the twist is that this queen was Edward's mother. The prince reveals that the first queen killed his mother and gave birth to Eleanor after receiving the king's new General Assembly. Upon hearing this, Kim summarizes that his younger sister was born from their mother's death, noting that this is quite chilling. Then, our protagonist asks if he didn't kill his mother, why the king, and they ask if they are fighting, and Edward says it is related to the eldest son. But Edward pauses and makes it clear that he only speaks about his eldest son when he is with them or when he has given permission. Kim wonders why he has been hiding their secret for all this time, but the prince says he has no other choice because he swore an oath to the goddess. After chatting enough, Edward tidies his hair and tells his brother that they need to move now. While they were walking, the knight said he didn't need a plan against the assassins. The prince says that it is with the coming-of-age ceremony. He says that he is qualified to become the next king. It was proven, and this means that the king cannot arbitrarily expel him. He plans to first deal with the old fools loyal to the king and win over the prime minister, who controls the kingdom's finances, to his side. While he is formulating his plan, Edward bumps into someone and explodes in anger, accusing them of daring to block the prince's path. However, it turns out to be none other than his own brother. The next scene, told from the king's perspective, shows him contemplating Edward and his older brother. He recalls the truly astonishing plan he had devised. The king killed all the brothers one by one to remove obstacles on the path to becoming a prince. According to him, so-called brothers are nothing, but they are still obstacles that must be removed. Enraged, he seems angry at Edward, the little rat with an older brother, and thinks that he is doing this to insult him. The old man's. The plan to usurp the crown succeeded. However, he may have left behind a terrible indelible scar. He plans to create a better pattern and thinks about children who have passed the selection process and been educated for their purposes. His eldest son was just and wise, enabling him to rule the kingdom fairly. His second son is a replica of his father, capable of eliminating anything that stands in the way of the eldest son's rule. And, finally, a political marriage with the beautiful and intelligent one was destiny. Unfortunately, his son's talents were more than what was needed for his plans. His son Edward was so cunning that he fell for it, and his own. She hated the people, and the eldest son was so righteous that he was chosen as her warrior for the goddess. Thus, the eldest son of the Grand Daryu Guang clan vanished, leaving only a cunning, short-shaving son and a capable daughter. Clenching his fists, the king concluded that it would be better for his daughter to claim the throne rather than that cunning, snake-like Edward, and determined that he must never become king. The scene shifts to Edward rising and addressing the hero. While the hero informs his younger brother to come to Ariansel for an urgent matter to discuss, Kim is shocked to discover that the most virtuous and righteous hero is the one chosen by the goddess herself. Our protagonist recognizes the hero as the kingdom's eldest son, predicts that he must be powerful to be protected by the goddess, and hopes he will not stand in his way. Upon arriving at Ariansel, the king and Edward were displeased to see each other again. The old man welcomes the hero with open arms, thinking that he should have become king. The hero thanks the old man for his warm welcome and gets to the point. It is revealed that the goddess has bestowed upon him the power of holy light. Amidst considerable controversy, the hero plans to embark on an expedition a week after receiving a response from the church and requests the kingdom's military support for his cause. The king smiles wryly, stating that it is their duty, and willingly supports the hero. Conversely, Edward is displeased with this, and when the old man delivers a proper blow, he gets angry and slaps his hand. As the demon king muttered that he had ruined his plan, Kim asks what that means. Only then did the prince realize that he did not know the situation here. The demon race was hostile to humans from the beginning, and their ruler was the demon king. It is stated that through the goddess's mediation, the two races must maintain a balance even if they are hostile to each other. Furthermore, if the balance tilts to one side, the goddess creates a warrior for the opposite side. And if the balance is not maintained despite the hero's efforts, she will grant them the power of the holy light. In other words, the power of the holy light grants the hero the right to kill the opposing king. Likewise, the demon king also has the right to be treated in a manner befitting his title. However, a hero possessing the power of the holy light can kill the demon king without fear of retaliation. Even after hearing this long story, our protagonist still does not understand what he is saying. Then Edward explains that the power of the holy light granted to the hero puts humanity in danger. As a member of the royal family destined to succeed to the throne, it becomes his responsibility to participate in the war. The cunning Edward already knows that the old man will fight on the front lines, and even if he survives, he will devise a scheme to drive him out of the kingdom. The next day, the king orders Prince Edward to go and bury the demon king with the hero. To preserve his pride, the prince declares that he is willing to lay down his life for the sacred warrior and confidently bows at the king's command. Upon hearing these words, those are impressed by the prince's so-called honor and loyalty, and the king smiles cunningly. Later, Eleanor witnesses her half-brother Edward leaving the palace and him. He comes for that. Meanwhile, Edward stops pretending to be nice and orders his older brother Kim to get out of this wretched place immediately. As he leaves the palace, Kim thanks the prince for accepting him better than expected. In any case, there wasn't much he could do. Edward, appearing annoyed, says that all they have to do is bury the demon king and kill that old bastard, referring to his father. He asked Kim about the situation outside, and Kim, as they approach the carriage, they inform the prince that they are planning something. Convinced that the old man will not let him go easily, the prince asks for the location, and Kim reports that someone is approaching from behind. When he tries to neutralize the shield, Tenny asks Edward if they should stop it. The prince refuses and lets them try. Leave it. A short while later, one of the guards, the shield. Upon successfully breaking it and completing stage 1, you proceed to stage 2. While two guards on either side of the wagon prepare to launch fireball attacks, the coachman receives a signal to dismount. As the two guards fall, the wagon suddenly collides and slows down. While aiming the wagon's fireballs, one guard accidentally shoots a fireball at another. Inside the wagon, Kim peeks outside, appearing to have transformed into a monster. Edward is rescued by Kim, who is turned into a giant monster, and the prince is quite surprised every time he sees the writing. Our protagonist makes a cool entrance and says that the monster will now have to get used to his side. As they moved forward, the knights who seemed to be blocking the path were monsters. I am surprised when I see it. Then the monster shouted Poyo. It makes the horses run wild. As one of the knights tries to cast a spell on a horse, another. They decide to complete the character first and calm the horses later. later. As they run toward the monster, surprisingly, the monster breathes fire at them and burns the knights to death. Kim himself is surprised by the powerful dragon fire and takes pride in using it on the orcs instead of confronting the dragon head-on. They become even more enraged when it is revealed that he killed the knight commander. One of them stabs a knife into the monster's arm, but the attack, it doesn't seem to have any effect on him. Then the dragon monster grabs the horse's tail and throws them with all its might. Seeing their fellow knights suffering severe injuries, they immediately retreat and devise a plan to inform everyone at once. As they flee in a panic, the knight promises to return to retrieve the commander's body. However, they are attacked from behind by Quantum Ray, and it is revealed that Edward is already involved. While Kim asks if it is magic, the prince appears to have used light magic for long-range shooting and reveals that he was born with the attribute of light. As expected, our protagonist is surprised by Edward's light magic and finds it ironic for someone who has been living hidden in the darkness. The next scene shifts to a village, where our protagonist explains that he and the prince arrived at the village where they were supposed to meet the hero's men after traveling on horseback for 2 days. Meanwhile, the prince is having lunch. Kim says that if he had left the starving world with the warrior, he could have avoided this ridiculous situation. However, Edward explains that if he were a hero, he would not have had the chance to kill him, and he seems quite convinced that the old man deliberately scheduled it that way. Meanwhile, the prince asks Kim Young if he has any questions, and our protagonist seems to have many things on his mind. He adds that since humans possess the power of the holy light, the battle will be one-sided, and that it would be a sin for the demons to harm the holy hero. Edward believes that the goddess is fair and everyone receives the same immunity granted by her power, so the holy light. He briefly replies that it is acceptable to kill the hero who has been empowered. He adds that the goddess will not punish the demon king even if the hero is killed. However, such a thing has never happened in history, and if the demon race succeeds in killing the human hero, it means that the superior race has triumphed and the rule of humanity has come to an end. Upon hearing this, Kim smiles wickedly and concludes that it is survival of the fittest, just as he has done his entire life. Edward asked why he was laughing when it had nothing to do with him. After asking, he warns Kim not to interfere with his plans, calling him a bastard. However, as sworn brothers, our protagonist reassures him that they still have a contract remaining. The prince breathes a sigh of relief and thanks him for becoming a moral monster, and Kim asks him if he knows of any other monsters. The prince then mentions a monster called Song Ryol, who is a real nuisance. At that moment, someone appears from behind and asks Edward to explain in detail. Well, it turns out that was Song Ryol. The surprised prince explains that she must have misheard. Song Ryol seems a bit angry about being called a monster. To make her shine even brighter, the prince calls her delusional and says that it would be tiring to accept every personal insult thrown at her and think that it extends to the entire group. Without giving up Song Ryol, the prince retorts that he is not as perfect as he appears and tells Edward that he will restore him to his rightful place if he visits the temple someday. When the prince tells her to realize that she is in her proper place, the prince seems to have crossed the line, and Song Ryol shakes the whole place in anger. While Edward is surprised, Song Ryol plans to resolve the situation outside and warns the prince to prepare for the event inside. As they continue to argue, people whispered about the prince and the saint fighting in the street. It starts, and then suddenly Kim shouts for them to be quiet. He throws gold to silence them and orders that he hasn't heard or seen anything here. After that, people get busy picking up gold, and Kim reminds the prince that cleaning up after him is not part of the contract. And it is revealed that Song Ryol is a warrior created by humans. Just as the goddess creates a hero, the temple creates a holy warrior using blessings and magic. Unlike the goddess who can create a hero in an instant, it takes the temple 10 years to create just one holy warrior. Furthermore, the cost is equally high, so they can only produce one. However, the completed Song Ryol is truly invincible as her bones are made of blessed magical metal. Her muscle mass has been expanded to the extreme, and she possesses superhuman physical abilities. The scene transitions to a flashback of the past when Edward first saw Song Ryol at the age of 6 and saw potential in her. He planned to make her his royal bodyguard, but the temple took her away. As he emerges from his flashback, the prince wonders if he can defeat her in battle. Kim walks outside and witnesses the prince fighting with Song Ryol. Seeing that both of them seem extremely angry, he asks them to stop, saying that a hero will be coming soon. Song Ryol finally left, saying he had something to prepare anyway, and Edward said it wasn't over yet, stating that he planned to catch her next time. Just then, our protagonist calls him out and grabs the prince by the neck. He reminds her of her agreement to become a knight, not his nanny. Sending a fierce glare over Gabon, Kim warns her not to annoy him any further with her foolish behavior. He lets go of the poor prince, who has started coughing, and leaves. Later, the hero arrived, and Kim said that he walked and did not give birth to the sky, and even one cannot help but think about the fact that he looks like an ordinary knight. Meanwhile, Song greets him, and the warrior says that Edward. They are delighted to see that he has arrived safely, while the prince reassures him that the journey was not particularly complicated except for a few minor exceptions. The hero introduces himself to Kim, the secret guardian knight. As they shake hands, Edward seems angry at him, and our protagonist looks at him, thinking that he is acting like a child because of what happened earlier. Afterwards, the hero informs them that the situation has not changed because the goddess has not withdrawn the power of the holy light, acknowledging that the demon king is far more powerful than his predecessors. It is pointed out that if you go this way, there is no guarantee that everyone will return alive. Then the warrior said that they still follow him. They ask if anyone is willing, and everyone agrees, including Kim Jaeong, the prince's guardian knight. Slamming his sword into the ground, the hero proclaims the formation of a knight order to bury the demon king, when suddenly someone appears. It looks like a demon who has been snickering as if they have been waiting for this moment. Soon the warrior, he discovers that the demon is Francis de Freud, the general of arrogance among the 7 generals. The strangely shaped demon witnesses humans declaring war in demon territory and is forced to fight. The demons ring a large bell, causing a commotion among the civilians. Disturbed by the ear-splitting noise, the hero requests that the demons not harm the heavy civilians. However, Francis firmly asserts that this village is their territory, that there are no more civilians here, and that only servants loyal to the demon king reside here. Suddenly, a large number of wolf demons appear and receive orders to kill the humans. It is revealed that werewolves are the worst kind of demons that infect humans and increase their numbers, and that those who transform cannot return to being human. These werewolves are forced to become puppets of the bounty demons for as long as they live. Meanwhile, General Francis of Oman believes that the werewolves will not be able to bring down the knights with this dismount, so he embarks on his true mission. Witnessing Prince Edward fighting a wolf with empty magic, he is said to have a happy technique similar to that of a headdress. Next is a saint who has mastered all kinds of spells, and the fighting style is tremendous power. The demon race is the standard heroes. While he was paying attention to the style, an innocent child who seemed to be infected by a wolf attacked him. The hero pauses for a moment. As he kills the wolf, Francis, I decide to grasp all the techniques and return. However, he realized that one of them was missing. Just then, our protagonist quietly appears behind him. Finally sensing someone's presence, Francis, who had just woken up, he is engulfed in fear, as if he cannot believe what has happened. He must wonder how they were able to come up behind him, and thinking it impossible since they must have sensed it. Thinking it is preposterous, he recalls the power of the general of Oman among the 7 generals. At that moment, stab him with a knife and eliminate Francis. The scene shifts to other demon generals who have heard the news that the general of Oman has died. They seem to call him a reckless general, mocking how overconfident he was. Another demon believes his death was not in vain, as they now realize that the human ghouls possess enough skill to defeat one of the generals. However, this turns out to be a joke when that demon concludes that Francis was the weakest among them. One demon asserts that the destruction of humanity is inevitable, claiming that even the hero is bound by the goddess. This demon is convinced that humans cannot defeat them because they have transcended the limits set by the goddess. Informing the Gimi hero of that fact and that the werewolves had been dealt with, the battle is the demon king's 7 generals. It seems to end with the execution of Francis, one of the generals. The prince used healing magic to examine the demon's face closely, and he wonders if he is one of the 7 generals who manage information. If so, he would possess considerable authority. He investigates whether Francis used a weak werewolf and was even too defenseless, but is relieved that this demon can be eliminated. Edward also begins to doubt the situation, suspecting that a real enemy might be hiding. Meanwhile, Kim wonders if the werewolves will be of help to him. He remembers that his compatibility with reptiles increased when he ate the gecko. Likewise, if he eats a werewolf, his compatibility with mammals will also increase. He devours the wolves, anticipating the results. The prince approaches Kim and asks if he is going to eat these wolves, then becomes flustered as he reminds him that there are other people here as well. The two turn their attention to the demon corpse in front of them and the prince. Kim says that this demon is no longer needed and was used as a pawn by the demon king. When he asks Kim for his thoughts on this, our protagonist says that information is important in every scenario. In other words, he believes that if the demon king eliminated the general in charge of intelligence, the demon society is no longer the society humans knew. The prince agrees with him and finds it hard to believe that the demon king simply abandoned the intelligence officer without making significant changes to the social structure. This makes him even more curious about what happened in the demon kingdom. At that time, our protagonist concluded that there might be a third person who came from Earth just like them. He gets off. At these words, the prince processes the information for a while and falls into complete shock. After stopping the drama filming, Eddie confirmed that Yong-se and Song Ryo were busy disposing of the bodies. He tells Kim to listen to him. Smiling broadly, he reveals his evil intention to eliminate the hero and the Holy Spirit if there really is a third person in the Demon Kingdom. Afterwards, to bury the werewolf corpses, they dig a huge pit and throw soil over it to cover the grave. Seongryeo, while praying for the dead, the carriages arrive. Song Ryo asks the hero who will hold the horse, as Kim only drives vehicles with engines. The hero's sacred code prohibits driving, while Song Ryo does not know how to drive a carriage. Therefore, the prince ends up driving the carriage. As he drives, Prince Edward thinks it is like Dragon Quest, and Kim wonders what it is. They curse at each other and have a brief argument. Our protagonist sees the prince speaking in Russian and guesses that he is trying to say something. He tells them to get to the point. The blonde man reveals that he knows a way to kill the hero, and to this, our protagonist wonders if a hero can truly die. He has encountered creatures and werewolves, but he cannot kill them easily, or he is not even sure if he can. He sensed this when he met a hero in the village, and that hero killed most of the werewolves solely through appearances without using any skills. Kim believes that his exceptional abilities make him a tough opponent. However, since our friend possesses numerous special skills, it is possible to defeat him. At that time, Eddie reveals that the qualifications for being chosen as a hero include being the most European, the most righteous, and having the kindest heart. However, if even one of these is not met, the hero will be punished and weakened to the point where Kim can face them. Our protagonist asks a companion if there is a plan, but the prince denies it, saying that a plan is not needed in the first place and they can just let things flow. Meanwhile, the saintess appears and interrupts their conversation by asking the prince what he is talking about with Kim. The prince angrily insults the saint. Then the two start arguing, and our protagonist gets fed up with them and decides to switch places with her. Finish with the hero. While he was there, he asked Kim how he became the prince's guardian knight, and our protagonist, "You must feel uneasy about why such a question is being asked." Then, the hero reveals new information that the prince is his younger brother. As soon as he finishes speaking, the hero feels a stabbing pain because he has violated the sacred rule that one must not be at ease. Our protagonist, having figured out Edward's plan, says that he could have avoided this pain if he hadn't asked him this question. The blonde man answers that this question was worth the pain he went through. Well, our protagonist finds it ironic that while the older brother cares for his younger brother, Edward plans to kill him. Anticipating what will happen, Kim reveals that he has signed a contract to protect Edward. In return, the prince will find a way to grant his wish. While they are talking, the hero asks if his goal must be to receive a reward for burying the Demon King. He realizes that the wish he speaks of is not easy. Upon hearing this, our protagonist seems unaware of the reward the hero is talking about and asks further about it. The fortress city is located at the very end of the Grand Continent Kingdom, and the Demon Kingdom is the fortress city. It is revealed that it is only a short distance away from the village. The hero needs help. Go out to help, and the adult goes to church. As she leaves to let them know she has arrived safely, she asks Kim to keep an eye on the prince so that he doesn't cause any trouble. At this, the blonde man gets angry and tells her to go to hell. He says, as soon as they left, Kim informs his colleague of new information regarding the reward for burying the demons and the prince. "I am very happy to hear this news." The girl explains that the goddess granted the hero the power of holy light as a sacred opportunity to bury the Demon King. If that duty is fulfilled, the goddess will grant a wish to each individual who participated. The blonde girl thinks it is so good she can't believe it, and our protagonist reassures her that it is true. Upon hearing the good news, the prince started gulping down his beer and declared that he would treat. Kim also orders a beer for himself. The prince drinks too much beer. Shinji feels unwell and throws up. His partner finds it disgusting. Like the prince, other people in the tavern also feel dizzy. Then, an unexpected event occurs where Edward's blood gushes out. On the other hand, the soldier is busy helping civilians. As he carried the wooden barrels, the middle-aged man thanked him for his kindness. The hero confesses that the rumors are true and calls him a worthless bastard. Realizing the situation, the hero draws his sword and asks the man in front of him who he is. The man says not to worry because they already know everything about him. Meanwhile, he knows who he is referring to. Curious, he turns around and sees all the civilians approaching him as if being manipulated. Well, it turned out to be one of the actual demon generals. Paris Glodorod controls all civilians, and he was there and he contaminated the water supply with parasites, and when these parasites are digested inside the body, it reveals that it takes control of the mind of the turtle host. Sadly, the infected have no choice but to obey every command given by the demons. In other words, these people are controlled heavy civilians, but the hero must kill them to reach the demons. It seems the demon race is forcing the hero to break his sacred rules. He asks the warrior how much he was willing to break the rule that one must not harm the heavy. Upon hearing this, the hero becomes frustrated that the demons know his weakness, climbs onto the roof to occupy the high places, and tries to find a way to discover the demons. However, his movements were already predicted when he witnessed his colleagues being controlled by parasites on the roof. The prince told the hero that his movements were predictable. He extends his arm in front of Kim Jae-yong to display his greed, and Kim blows his arm away with a single movement. The warrior is shocked by Kim's heinous act of harming the prince he had sworn to protect. However, he snapped Edward's neck and strangled Seongrio until he lost consciousness. It doesn't end here while making it. Even the demon race thought it was a bit too much. He tells Kim to stop, but our protagonist, he jumps off the roof holding two people. He justifies his actions to the hero, claiming that it will prevent them from committing suicide, and instructs him to look after his comrades while he deals with the demon. One of the civilians controlled by the demons claims that Kim luckily avoided his parasite, but his words are left unsaid as our protagonist kills him. Meanwhile, the hero is terrified and reminds them of the heavy civilian. This shocks the demons, as they never expected a knight to kill his own kind without hesitation. When Kim agreed to the hero's words to prevent one of the civilians from dying, they are glad that they will not remember what they intend to do. Then, the ruthless monster transforms its hands into troll muscles, rushes toward the citizens, and instantly kills countless heavy citizens. As the terrified demon shouted for him to stop and reminded him that he was a knight who must not kill heavy citizens, Kim retorted that he should not act like a hypocrite and that he should never have manipulated them in the first place. Terrified by the fear of death, the parasitic demon gave up and surrendered to Kim, saying he would release the citizens and return to the demon kingdom. When Kim killed more citizens, the demon became annoyed and shouted, wondering whether he had listened to him or not. However, our cunning protagonist was making his way because many people were blocking the path, and finally, turns out that a demon hiding on the wall was discovered. Upon being discovered, the parasitic demon immediately attempts to escape. He resolves to flee without caring about the hero or anything else, but our protagonist catches him in time and slams him against the wall. When the demons, terrified, warned Kim to stay away, our protagonist confesses that he has never seen such a creature before and that none of his skills match those of the demon race. Please, saying to listen to just one thing, our protagonist extends his blood with an evil smile and prepares to swallow him. The demon race thinks that he has never encountered a creature like this before, and his life flashes before his eyes like a slideshow. He even released parasitic larvae into the water source to contaminate it, and living creatures could not survive there. There was none. Even if they resisted, he could manipulate their comrades. From his perspective, the plan was perfect. However, this bastard, who called himself a knight but ran rampant, harming his comrades and killing his own kind without hesitation, was someone he had never expected. However, given that the situation has reached this point, there is nothing to say, and he seems convinced that Kim will not be able to overcome his power because he is in perfect control. And just like that, he is devoured by the knight. And so it did. It turned out that the demon, knowing full well what it was, had voluntarily lunged at Kim's face and clung to it. Kim was, you must swallow the demon down its throat and twist, wondering if it just committed suicide. He tried eating many parasites on Earth, but he could not gain any abilities from parasites that only controlled insects and fish. However, this demon has the ability to control humans, so you might be able to use part of that ability. Then, to test his abilities, he bites off a finger made of troll skin and spits it onto the ground. As he separates a part of his body, the finger begins to tremble and transforms into a fish. Through this, he establishes that while he can detach and control parts of his body, there are limits to the size and length he can manipulate. Believing that he could develop this ability by consuming more hybrid life forms, the protagonist glances down at the citizens and decides to start with the cleanup. At the Demon King's castle, the demon generals gather to discuss how Gluttony was defeated too easily. When questions were raised about his chances of survival, one of them said that he had died because all the parasite samples in his laboratory had also died. He says that the demon was a glutton. He was one of the demons who wondered how on earth he died, noting that although he was behind the times, he was a being worthy of being one of the 4 great kings. It is reported that a monster killed humans under its control and chased him, and it was revealed that it is a knight following the prince. Excluding Gluttony and the 4 heavenly kings, the demons decide to send Rage, who can fight humans, but he is too valuable to be used against the hero. He adds that since Rage is specialized in dealing with large numbers of humans, it would be more effective to use him against an allied human army. However, a demon entered, interrupted the conversation, and I have news to share. As soon as everyone falls silent upon hearing what happened to his brother Gluttony, anger sets out to chase the monster. Meanwhile, the prince and his companions continue their journey. The hero appears to think that Kim's method was the most effective for killing the demons. Curious, it is said that the hero could have avoided the unnecessary slaughter slaughter of innocent people who were merely being manipulated by demons using his powerful abilities, while our protagonist shifts all responsibility for the damage onto the demons. The hero notices that there is absolutely no guilt on Kim's face regarding his actions. He cannot believe that Kim is the prince's secret guardian and regards him as a demon. The hero worries about Kim's careless behavior, and while I was there, I suddenly heard the prince's voice. The carriage comes to a stop. While the hero asks what is going on, Edward saw the creature in front of him. He looks extremely frightened. What appeared was the wrathful Dracostera, who came here to avenge his gluttony. It was Joel's. As the giant creature moved its body forward, the ground shook. Edward and the young man were terrified to death. He eats. Meanwhile, when Kim stepped forward and asked the prince if he knew this creature, Eddie, I answer that I have read about it in books, but this is the first time I am seeing it in person. It is said that 50 years ago, a Hanma warrior rode this monster into battle. I heard it is twice the size of a dragon. Our protagonist thinks that if this creature is twice the size of a dragon, its length is probably about 100 feet. I calculate that it is 30 meters, but it looks bigger than that. I wonder if it has an end. The prince tells us that he has likely grown over the past 50 years because reptiles tend to continue growing throughout their lives. Their conversation is interrupted by the saint. She shouts that this is not the time to marvel, but to figure out how to kill this monster. Everyone falls silent as a strange sound is suddenly heard. It was a tail like a hammer that the beast had struck, and it swung its tail with all its might and slammed it into the carriage. As the giant demon wags its tail, the carriage is destroyed and the entire party lands on the ground. The enraged demons called them dismounting bugs. He calls out, vowing revenge, and asks who killed his comrade. When the demons attack them again with their tails, they dodge the attack. Meanwhile, the saintess urges Edward to show her skills, saying that shield defense is his specialty. However, the prince thinks there is no way to stop the attack and dismisses it as absurd. He points at the hero and asks if he can do something with the parrying skill, a counterattack technique that deflects attacks. The hero refuses, saying the attack is too powerful, and suggests that the saint absorb the blow and recover later. However, that seems impossible, and since being hit by it would shatter into pieces, there would be no time to recover. With no way to stop it, the three of them look at Night Kim. At first, he shyly asks if they really think he can handle that giant creature, then soon reveals that he has a plan. Meanwhile, the demon believes that, based on experience, it is dangerous to be consumed by rage, even if his predecessors have died. The wounds from the surprise attack by those humans still hurt, but his tactics have been perfected through trial and error. From identifying the enemy's presence with detection technology to sweeping the area to prevent them from hiding and intercepting them as they approach, the demons are confident that if they use their tactics, they will not lose even half a battle against a hero. On the other hand, Song Nyan seems to oppose Kim's idea, considering it somewhat reckless. When our protagonist asks her if there is a better way, the hero speculates that if they flee, the cities could be in danger. Therefore, they must fight even if there is no hope of winning. With that, the hero rushes toward the demons. Kim prepares for the next move. Meanwhile, the hero is fighting that creature. You come to realize that the goddess's holy sword unleashes ultimate power against evil creatures. And if it does not face evil, it is merely an ordinary giant. The beast's wrath appears to have been triggered by wrath that is neither evil nor benevolent. As a result, the black ultimate power is not being unleashed. The hero continues to dodge attacks and gets close to the beast. As I approached, I thought that it wouldn't be able to wag its tail at this distance. He thought so, but unexpectedly, the demon's tail was flexible and struck the hero. Fortunately, he scraped the ground like a spider and landed a direct hit. He avoided getting hit, but it seems he cannot stand up. Watching the hero lose hope, the demon asks if this is all, thinking that his fellow demon Ferris lost to such a weakling. When the beast thinks the hero is joking before he dies, the warrior predicts that he cannot believe their plan succeeded perfectly. The scene goes back 5 minutes and leads to the scene where Kim reveals the only way to defeat the monster. He explains that he will approach from underground while the hero distracts the beast. He discovers a scar on its lower abdomen and plans to target that spot. However, the hero asks if he is confident that this will succeed, and our protagonist confidently agrees that all he needs to do is keep the monster's attention for a long enough time. Kim thinks that while the monster won't be able to detect him, it will be able to hear the sound of digging underground, and so the hero ends up playing the role of believing him. When the hero decides to follow his plan, Kim asks why he trusts him, and the hero replies that there is no way that is true and that as a hero, he has the ability to detect lies. Our protagonist does not seem to be lying this time, and since the abilities of this world do not work on him, he can lie to the hero if necessary and plans to use them against him someday. Then the warrior rushed forward to attract the beast's attention, and Kim attacks him from underground. To him, who possesses the strength of almost any animal, the body of a troll's muscular mole. Digging underground with abilities like dragon's claws was the easiest thing to do. A short while later, the beast finally scents the steam and he is struck by the dragon's arm. Just like that, our protagonist leaps at him with the dragon's claws. It burrows into his body. Kim successfully enters the beast's body, but it seems too big to wander around aimlessly. Upon confirming the new parasite ability, the parasites begin to scatter in all directions. Surprisingly, it seems that the parasites are transmitting all the information back to him. Thinking his ability is useful, our protagonist recalls that the parasitic demon was friends with this beast. With an evil smile, our protagonist reflects on how cruel fate can be, seeing the beast dying at the hands of its own friend. At that moment, he senses something inside the monster's body. While tearing it apart, he discovers organs and leaps in for a feast. Meanwhile, the hero decides to attack, but I witness a monster crying out in pain, pleading for help, saying its insides feel like they are burning. While he flinches in fear, thinking that the execution is too cruel, Edward is surprised that his brother has done it. After that, when the beast breathes its last, it collapses and Kim avoids it. Soaking wet, it bursts out through the snow. Our protagonist mercilessly pierces through the beast's body. The three of them are left speechless as they watch him come out. On the way, Kim breaks the silence by asking what happened, and Edward explains that he was simply shocked by what he had done earlier. However, our protagonist does not seem to care much, as he gained a valuable ability from him. The protagonist explains that the dinosaur monster was not very valuable considering its size. It had nothing but large muscles, yet it tore apart his far superior, powerful troll with the help of its muscles, dragon scales, and skin. The hunt was not a complete loss. It was a victory. First, he chewed on the lungs of the monster, a powerful mass of muscle. The lungs require a large amount of oxygen to support their massive size, and because they can inhale a large amount of air, it means they can also exhale air with the same force. Thanks to that lung, his dragon breath became even more powerful. Second, it was a blood vessel with small heart-like organs attached to the artery and vein. This allows the body to continue receiving blood even if the heart is destroyed. And finally, he discovered something precious. And thanks to this, he gained the ability to fly. The next scene shifts to the demon generals who learn that anger has also been eliminated. With only the 4 great kings remaining, one of them hysterically smiling, he said it seems like everything is going according to the demon king's plan. He says this and adds that the hero will head to the demon king's castle. Now that they have wiped out the human village, he expects the hero will try to destroy the source of the problem to avoid casualties. The demons seem to have succeeded in removing the relics of the past era without doing anything, and at the same time, they made the hero believe that he had killed the demon king's top generals. The demon general declares that the time for humanity's extinction has come. Humanity will win this war if they behead the demon king. However, the demons must destroy or force them to surrender. The general adds that as long as the hero stands, humanity will not surrender. This is because the hero has been blessed by the goddess herself. The demon race concludes that in order to win this war, they must destroy humanity. Simply put, they only need to annihilate humanity before the hero kills the demon king, and this is the wise word of their new demon king. After that, all the demon generals swear allegiance to their demon king who came from another world. The scene is the rugged area where the eunuch monsters passed. The scene transitions to passing through. As they are walking, demons appear and demand that the humans stop immediately. As more demon soldiers appear and surround them, they fight back. When Kim slayed the 2 demons, something caught his attention and it appears to be a map. After dealing with the demons, Kim informs them about the map of the demon kingdom. He found it on one of the demon soldiers. As Edward examined the map, he saw that all the roads led to a single point on the map. It is said that all roads are connected to the main battlefield. Meanwhile, the adult believes that this map is for the Gospel King, and the hero prepares to kill the demon king now that he has the map. However, the prince saw the village located in the mountains and strategically. I consider it carefully because it is connected to a major road, even though it has no value. Song Nyan speculates that Edward is implying that this village could be defeated by the demon king, so he thinks he should visit it at least once. As the hero's instinct seemed to cry out that the village was important, the hero agreed to visit it. A week later, they arrived at the village and to the demons. I see citizens being manipulated making weapons. Edward witnesses what he had expected. The demons create weapons. It seems like it is there, but the hero gains enlightenment and thinks about what he must do. At that time, his brother says that he must fulfill the duty he swore to them. When the prince says that they must kill the demons, the hero grabs him by the shoulder and asks if he intends to kill innocent citizens. Edward justifies his claim, stating that no citizens are visible here and that all citizens are involved in the war effort by making weapons. The hero stops him and asks what on earth he is thinking. At that moment, the poor man clutches his chest in pain. Edward calms him down and tells him not to break his sacred rules. The prince asks if killing citizens is an evil act, and the warrior, who still looks pained, replies that massacring citizens is not exactly a good thing. The prince said that they are infiltrating the enemy base to reduce casualties by destroying enemy military facilities, killing blacksmiths, and cutting off enemy supplies. He believes. At that moment, the hero asks himself a question and recalls the sacred rule of a hero that he must always be just and comforting. Without delay, Kim begins the action, and this renders the hero helpless. As a result, he begins to question his own morality and gradually develops a sense of justice regarding what is good and bad. Without a single ounce of emotion, our protagonist mercilessly kills the citizens and fight against those who do not attack first. It looks like you are working yourself to death because you refused. Song Nyan fell into a panic after witnessing the young demon die. While Edward was frantically taking care of her, Kim thought that every single one of them was useless. Later, the prince gets his hands on a gun and tells Kim about what they were making here. Edward was delighted to see the Mauser pistol, saying that he had gained a German gun enthusiast. He asks Kim, calling him brother, if he knows what this means. Wiping the blood from his face, our protagonist suspects that there is a third being, just like those in the Demon King arc. Meanwhile, when the hero asks if he has discovered anything while interfering with them, Edward informs him that the Demon Kingdom plans to mobilize its citizens for war. Upon hearing this, the hero is shocked. Upon receiving it, the prince continues to say that even an ordinary citizen can equip and use this pistol with the simplest mindset, and that he was manufacturing these for that very purpose. After hearing his words, the hero departs, and Edward expresses his gratitude for Kim's excellent work. He rewards him with a short vacation, marks the encampment on the map, and hands him the map, telling him to feast to his heart's content. Meanwhile, our protagonist considers this to be more like a business trip. Looking at the map with determined eyes, he appears excited, wondering if this will be a golden opportunity to test his new abilities. Suddenly, a loud noise was heard near the village. Edward smiles cunningly and thinks that things are going according to plan. The scene switches to a warrior who appears to be expressing his rage by throwing a powerful punch. Crying heartbreakingly, the poor man looks helpless and thinks about what he must do. The next scene takes us to Stopes, a port city of the Demon Kingdom. There, we meet a half-human, half-demon boy named Midden, who is carrying a heavy ruler. She watches. After moving 20 cubic meters of gunpowder and a box of coal, the girl receives her wages and leaves, calculating the amount needed for rent and food for herself and her younger sister, Myron. Sighing deeply, Mead thinks about her difficult life and how she barely manages to make ends meet, but she resolves to work hard. She recalls her younger sister, Myron, handing her a lollipop she bought for her on the way home. The next day, the girl starts working again and lifts the sack onto her shoulder, but somehow it feels lighter than yesterday. Thinking that he might have become stronger, Mead hopes that although he may be just a dock worker now, one day he will become one of the actual Zhang generals. The scene shifts to Kim, who explains the existence of a second brain in some large dinosaurs, as speculated by scientists. Because their large body size meant that nerves took longer to receive signals from within, they hypnotized another brain located near the waist to assist the main brain. Kim was able to find the second brain of a dinosaur beast when he replaced his own brain with that of another creature to recreate the nervous system. Therefore, even if it is a body part unique to that creature, he can use it freely without any practice. Nevertheless, he has never used his brain to that extent because there is a risk that the owner's original brain will take control of the body. However, if he uses this ability on his second brain, he can replace it with the brain of a completely different creature without any side effects. In other words, he can transform his entire body, excluding the brain, into a dragon's body and fly. He combined the lizardman's sticky scales with the dragon's scales and replaced the lizardman's slime with mystium slime. He also reinforced his body with dinosaur lungs and blood vessels, as well as troll blood and bone marrow for regenerative abilities. With all these strengths combined, his body became stronger than ever, transforming from an orc into one with powerful, dense muscles, bringing him closer to becoming the most powerful creature in the world. With a great roar, the dragon begins to attack the village's demons with a breath of fire. Panicked by the sudden attack, the demons flee for their lives, but suddenly the dragon swallows a fish-like demon. Witnessing the dragon, Mid rushes to save his younger sister, rejoicing at the fact that their room is close to the harbor, which will allow him to save her. Unfortunately, the dragon flies to where his room is and destroys the building. In an instant, the building turns into rubble, and Mid, overwhelmed by shock, I stood there trying to believe what I had just seen. As the boy's eyes wander through the broken pieces of the building, he catches a glimpse of his younger sister's hand sticking out from under the rubble and goes mad. He grabs a giant and runs toward the dragon to stab it, but his strength is no match for the most powerful dragon, and he is shattered into pieces. And sadly, Mid is eaten by a dragon. After that, Kim realized that Edward had marked all the places where he manufactured and stockpiled military supplies. I presume the prince wanted to weaken the Demon King's military capabilities. abilities. It is irrelevant to our protagonist anyway, but he regarding the points marked on the map. Thanks to this, I was able to eat a variety of creatures, and I returned to my main job, especially excited at the thought of testing the abilities of the fish I had eaten. 10 hours after the destruction of Stuckfish, the demons suffered immeasurable damage in the blood chamber, and it appears they are holding a meeting to discuss the loss of the city, including the loss of supplies. Upon hearing that it was a dragon, one of the demons asks Nate, a member of the dragon demon tribe, for his opinion on the situation regarding her fellow demon. Nate believes it is impossible. This is because it was reported that the so-called dragon did not breathe fire more than 50 times during the 9 hours from sunset to dawn, and such an feat is impossible unless one is a legendary dragon lord. The worlds. The demon with eyes suspects Sloth, saying that their gone lord is right here with them, but she glared at him, angry at him blaming her. The demon race seems to imply that if the demon dragon lord exists with them, there cannot be another legendary dragon. Then, it is interrupted by the demon general jealousy. He reminds them that this is not important. Instead, they must focus on how to proceed. The demon general reveals that news of Stubbit has spread throughout the kingdom. In just one day, the dragon has become the ultimate object of terror. If the generals of the true species eliminate the threat, the kingdom's morale will rise. The other demons agree with this idea and praise him. Meanwhile, Sloth decides to go himself this time, thinking that Stubbits might be of the same species as himself, and is ready to show what a real dragon looks like. From Kim's perspective, the attack on the port city was the most rewarding thing he had done as a result of joining the hero and his party. He consumed hybrids such as fish or insect demons and was able to optimize new dragon abilities in the form of a dragon. Thanks to recent predation, he has come to better understand his dragon form. He believes that if he continues this progress, he will soon reach his ultimate goal of becoming the apex predator. He glides over another village, preparing to attack, when the demons spot him for the first time. They mistake him for one of the demon generals, but soon realizing it is Stubbit's dragon, he begins to flee for his life. The dragon mercilessly breathes fire in all directions. It devours and tramples all living things. On the other hand, Slot flies around searching for an opponent, and according to reports, the dragon was sighted near the 6th Army outpost an hour ago. Not knowing who the dragon is, she resolves to teach it a lesson the moment she spots it. Kim causes tremendous destruction in just 1 hour. Meanwhile, Slot finally discovers the dragon and finds it crude as she watches it eat corpses. More importantly, she had been told it was a red dragon. However, upon seeing the dragon possessing body parts from various creatures, she is bewildered. She devises a plan to use Dragon Speak, an ability that uses the dragon's power to instill fear and subjugate opponents. The Slot shouts to stop, but shortly after, she realizes that her ability has no effect on Kim. This enrages her, and she believes she cannot be stopped, as her Dragon Speak ability could subdue even other dragons. The protagonist clearly tells her that she would be wise to abandon any hope of manipulating him with her own power, as she seems to have realized that the opponent's strength is greater than that of the weak. He warns her that if she attempts to manipulate him once again, he will have no choice but to take appropriate countermeasures. Upon hearing this, she calls him arrogant, her eyes twitching with anger. Because she is very haughty, her pride is wounded. I swear to wear it and plunge him into the deepest despair. With those words, the two begin to fight, showing off what they have. After fighting for 10 minutes with claws and powerful thrusts, Slot shows signs of exhaustion as the dragon's body throbs with pain. She realizes that the opponent is holding out by continuously blocking her attacks and adds that she has never seen such a strong dragon in her life. Conversely, Kim knows that even a dragon cannot penetrate the muscles of a mystium or an ogre, and if even a dragon as powerful as her can do nothing, other creatures will not be able to leave him with anything more than scratches. After that, the protagonist decides to move on to the next experiment and remove the mystium slime from their body. However, as soon as he does so, Slot realizes his defenses have weakened and immediately attacks him, biting his neck and tearing off chunks of flesh. Controversy over the surprise attack, Kim is thrown to the ground. He restores his muscles with his super regenerative abilities, leaving her wondering and astonished what kind of creature she really is. Having finished this form of experiment, Kim tells her to spare Slot's life as a reward for her park. However, this provokes her pride again, causing her. It drove me crazy and made me decide to reveal the true power of the legendary Dragon Lord. She uses her ability, Condensed Dream Breath, to create a fireball and the protagonist. We have no choice but to destroy her. The legendary Lord Dragon spits out something that looks like a parasite and, crashing to the ground, one must wonder what on earth is happening to them. And then Kim reveals that it is the flesh she swallowed. It turned into a parasite and ate away at her intestines. He then warns her not to eat just anything she sees and mocks her, muttering that there is no next time and she must be careful. Meanwhile, Slots meets his end and dies, Someone contacts Kim using telepathy magic and asks for help. The next scene leads to a hero revealing his past story. He says that he is a disciple of the goddess and a time traveler from the future, 10 years in the future. 10 years from now, the demons joined forces with humans to fight the monsters of the sect. In the future, that monster devoured all 4 great kings, including the generals of the 7 deadly sins, the demon king, and the hero himself. The returning hero goes back to the past 10 years ago, goes straight to Lord Daesam, and exterminates the slime that will later evolve into the monster of the broken sect. By doing so, Kim Jae-yong, who was carrying out the mission in the forest, was safe, and thus he was able to save the life of the prince who had originally died in the hero's timeline. The hero saved a life on the brink of death by changing the future, but he does not know what future awaits him. The hero, clenching his fists, does not seem to regret giving up the future he knew and killing the monster of the broken sect. However, the one thing he regrets is not finding out more about the Demon Lord's army. If he had conducted more research, they would not have been so helpless against the demons and at least one of the demon generals. You must have discovered the power of this demon race while mentioning greed. The scene shifts to 30 minutes earlier, moving to where the saint, the warrior, and Prince Edward continue their journey. While they were walking, the warrior asked the prince where he had sent Kim Jae-yong. He asks and tells them that he sent the seaweed to an important place. Edward will arrive at their next destination soon. As they say this, they witness demons standing on the road welcoming the hero's party. It is, "Welcome to Grand Vegas, the city ruled by Greed, one of the 7 deadly sin generals." Humbly, Greed asks the hero to stop Saruk and fight peacefully, but the prince opposes this and asks what his ulterior motive is. To change the atmosphere, the demon general suggests playing a game to determine the winner. However, when the prince opposes this and thinks they are being targeted, the hero, having lost too many lives on the way here and wanting to stop it, immediately accepts the demon's proposal. Greed is very happy to hear this and thinks it was too easy to deceive them. He leads them inside and says he will treat them as honored guests for just one night. As the game is about to begin, other demons start whispering that they wish for the destruction of humanity tonight after witnessing the hero's death here. After that, the seemingly evil Greed revealed that the game was poker, and Edward decides to step forward first, believing that he had already mastered poker when he infiltrated the poaching gang and that even that monster Kim was no match for him. Then the demons set their own conditions, saying that if the prince wins, they will allow safe passage. However, if he loses, Greed will take his soul. A moment later, Edward slams his hand on the table and accuses the demon of being a fraud. As the poor friend trembles in rage, Greed reminds him that it is not a scam as long as the prince does not catch him. Meanwhile, Edward declares that this round is a waste of time and, with a look of disbelief, resolves to uncover the trick he used against him. Nevertheless, the prince is defeated, and as promised, Greed takes his soul. When the demon took his soul and put it inside a coin, the adult, he screams in terror at the demon, "How dare you steal Eddie's soul, you bastard!" Right then, Greed reveals that it is a unique technique called absolute execution that fulfills pre-sold contracts in any situation. As the saint tried to strike the demon, Greed, he explains that as long as his second skill, the realm of complete peace, is active, such barbaric violence does not work here. The purely evil demon speculates that with these 2 skills, no one can defeat him at the card table. Greed attempts to deceive the saint, and Edward assumes that it is important to her, which confuses her. She creates. The demon race can read her by looking at the emotions written on her face, just like an open book. He told the saint that if she wanted the prince back, she should play a game with him. She makes a proposal and asks to bet Edward's soul and her soul. When the hero tried to stop him, saying he was too reckless, the adult reassured him that he could do it, saying that she adds that there is a reason she is called the ace of the convent. The confused warrior asks if she gambles at the convent, and the young woman asks what she thinks she did during that long winter as the only girl in the convent. She threw away the cards and played a game over the dice. After deciding to do it and unexpectedly losing a short while later, Greed takes her soul as well. The demon nearly lost to the saint and muttered that it had been a long time since he met an opponent like her. During this time, the hero is left alone. Then, Greed approaches the hero to use the same trick and asks if he wants to play a game to retrieve his comrade's souls, adding that he only needs to bet his soul. However, the hero falls into a state of panic, thinking that he has never gambled before. Believing that he has never gambled in his life, the hero cannot leave his comrades in that state, so he is unable to achieve his goal or escape. Just then, someone blasts the demon through the door, sending him crashing to the floor. As Kim makes a symbolic appearance, the warrior witnesses him and cannot hide his joy, while Greed welcomes the rather hot-tempered new guest. The demons believe that he walked in of his own accord to die. Meanwhile, the protagonist is the soulless saint and Edward. Looking at the healer, he thinks it is useless. He decides to finish quickly and return to his original self. He lightly puts on. As he clenches his hand, Greed asks him if he plans to use force, informing him that using violence nearby would be futile due to his unique ability, the realm of complete peace. Kim confirms with the hero, and the hero confirms that the demons are telling the truth. It informs us that his technology neutralizes all acts of violence within this wall. Well, it seems the protagonist was captivated by the demon's technology and sought a feast. Afterwards, Greed explains that it stole the souls of both the prince and Saint Test, and in order to get them back, Kim must defeat him. The demons clearly state that if they want to reclaim their souls, they must wager something of equal value. He too must stake his soul. The protagonist, as if agreeing to his conditions, he made a shocking claim, staking his own soul and the hero's soul. Upon hearing this, the hero is terrified and asks what geography is. Then, Kim says that since the demons took 2 souls, they must wager 2 souls to reclaim them. While the demons agree that he is right, the protagonist reassures the hero that he can definitely defeat him. Muttering that Eddie had said the same thing before losing his soul, Kim asserts that he has a higher chance of winning anyway. The flustered hero seems to trust him. Waging 2 souls, Greed asks the knight which game he wants, and Kim raises his hand. He instantly pretends to play rock, paper, scissors, and the protagonist punches the demon directly in the face, getting beaten to a pulp. According to the experiment conducted by Kim, it was revealed that the skill does not work on him. Simply put, this monster is unaffected by skills that target it directly. It is just like taking damage from a fireball that creates a fireball and throws it at a target. This is because it is a skill that throws a fireball generated by another skill, and the same applies to Rapid Apple and Guided Apple. Likewise, this demon's realm of complete peace skill ultimately does not work on him. This is because this skill only applies to people using violence within the area. Returning to the current scene, Kim violently tramples the demon. It was the first time in his life that Park Hano-Grid could not comprehend this sensation. When he finally realized the sensation of physical pain, he also discovered that the realm of complete peace had been shattered, and a sense of defeat was deeply etched into his soul. Furthermore, as the preset contract conditions are met, Bakano's other unique skill, Absolute Execution, is nullified. With the 2 souls returning, Song Ryo and Edward appear to be in shock. Meanwhile, the demon mutters that this is a scam. Having already beaten him to his heart's content, Kim moves on to the second game, betting Greed's life and everything he left behind. Our ruthless protagonist asks him whether to use his right hand or his left. Laughing like a madman, Kim deforms his own foot while Park Hano guesses. When he gives the wrong answer, the protagonist kicks him, and blood splatters everywhere. The demons, witnessing the annihilation of one of the great kings, flee in terror, risking their lives. However, the monster imprisons them and asserts that no one will leave here alive. Hearing this, the hero objects and makes him understand that there is no need to kill without reason. Kim looks at him with a cold gaze and justifies that getting rid of this trash is a righteous act, as these pieces of trash were enjoying watching Park Hano steal people's souls. While the hero was trying to persuade him, the knight, pointing a sword at his neck, he asks the hero whether he will choose justice or goodness. When he remains silent, Kim tells him that someone who does not even know where their heart lies is merely an obstacle to their path, and orders him to take those 2 out. The hero takes the saint and Edward out of there. The demons inside scream, begging to be spared and let out. The ruthless monster begins cleaning the house and devours the demons, screaming in agony like a ravenous beast. He acquired his skills after a bet with the demon general, and the moment he acquired them, information poured into his head. After gaining control of the casino, Kim discovers that it was a personal fortress where greed controlled everything. Now that the protagonist has gained control, he attempts to test a few hypotheses, but it seems he is running out of time. After removing the extinguishing substances and supplying oxygen to the interior of the building, the monster breathes fire there. The entire thing is blown up. The hero, witnessing the flames burning outside the building, is startled. He is surprised, but recalls his conversation with Kim Kyung and turns the brightness. The next scene takes place at the demon hideout, where the 2 remaining demon generals are shocked by the situation. Meanwhile, a small demon arrives and asks about the situation. He is informed that one of the demons has lost contact with Slots. The realm of greed in Grand Vegas has fallen, and he cannot be found anywhere. After realizing that there is no possibility of them being alive, the demon race begins to weep, saying they have lost 2 very talented demons. However, when striking Jealousy, one of the generals of Sin, calls the girl Your Majesty, and says that there is no need to grieve because the plan proceeded without the intervention of the 4 great kings. When asked if he cannot grieve the death of his comrades, the demon is apologizing to her. He says that they volunteered to stop the warrior and adds that while it is tragic, mourning would be an insult to their sacrifice. Agreeing that the warrior was delayed and their plan had reached its final stage, His Majesty concludes that it is a sacrifice for the greater good and leaves the place feeling weary. After she leaves, Jealousy and Segayak argue over their inappropriate titles. Nevertheless, this, Sagayak seems concerned about His Majesty's plans as they are nearing the final stage. He speculates that their deaths would not cause any disruption. Hearing this, Jealousy asks who should die first and decides to volunteer. Seeing his colleague willing to die, Sagayak is worried, but Jealousy. He reassures the reader by saying that he is merely an old man who wants to go first. The scene shifts to Grand Vegas, a pig colony left abandoned by an explosion. We see Kim, the sole survivor. He explains that setting fire to the casino was dangerous even for him, as his super regeneration ability came from troll fluid, which is vulnerable to fire. However, he was able to protect himself with dragon scales and lizard man slime. Additionally, if the regenerative areas are exposed to fire, they will suffer fatal damage. Considering the fight with the dragon, he was too careless, and it would have been dangerous if the dragon had breathed fire on his regenerating shoulder. Returning to the present, Kim hears a rustling sound inside a dead fish and spots a salamander, wondering if it is a pet raised by a demon. Meanwhile, a lizard jumped up, and it was a huge reptile at a height of 15 feet. The protagonist speculates that this lizard was able to withstand the dragon's fire. Captivated by it, I open my mouth for another meal. He held the tail. He bites and tears a salamander to pieces with his sharp claws. Later, the protagonist joins the hero and the others. Meanwhile, Prince Edward has a headache and thinks that being in that place was the worst thing he could have done. Seeing Kim grinning, he asks if something good happened, while inwardly thinking of him as a creepy bastard. He calls out. However, the protagonist skips the main point and informs that he escaped from the fire. Then, it is revealed that the strange lizard salamander that Kim ate is a rare lizard that is immune even to dragon fire. It secretes internal mucus from cells on the skin surface and throughout the body. With this, he concluded that he had overcome his weakness, now able to use it on his troll skin, which he previously could not cover with mucus. He gets off. While Kim reveals everything about his new ability, Edward processes the new information, writes down his thoughts, and feels a slight wariness toward him. He senses it. Shortly after, while conversing in English, the protagonist reassures Jewel that there is no need to worry, as he will return to where he came from once he learns the method. The bewildered prince, seemingly feeling threatened by his sworn brother, confesses that knowing something with the head and feeling it with the heart are completely different. Afterwards, Kim reflects on the fact that they are working together. However, if Edward views Jewel as an object of fear, it could lead to unintended consequences. To change the atmosphere, the protagonist alleviates his panic by saying that although he is evil, he is helpful. Edward asked what that meant. When asked, Kim said that he took over the work when the other man lost consciousness. It was handled, and it informs us that the hero turned his back on justice and chose good. Upon hearing this, Eddie records his second strike as if struck right in the heart. Laughing like a monster, the prince said that if he satisfied just one more condition, the hero would. I believe I can kill it. At that time, the hero was the most powerful being on the continent of Edmud, and it is revealed that one is protected not only by physical strength, but also by a grand plan of life known as fate. As the demon lord's army attacks the hero and approaches, at times, the hero avoids fatal blows that would have killed an ordinary human 1,000 times over, and when his life is in danger, someone comes to his rescue. If he encounters an opponent he cannot defeat, someone happens to intervene and grant the hero victory. If the hero faces a situation requiring a 1 in a million chance, a miracle is bound to happen. Therefore, to kill the hero, a much stronger power is needed to overturn his fate, but such a being has never existed. It led to the result where the demon king was killed by a human hero, and the human king by a demon hero. His destiny protects him only when he is a hero. Otherwise, it does not work. If the hero acts contrary to his qualifications, destiny will no longer protect him. Meanwhile, the hero is happy to find friction because he has a long way to go. The prince jokes as if he were molding something, saying that he received the goddess's blessing thanks to him. Edward is the most just, fair, and virtuous thing to Kim. It continues to be explained as the qualifications of a hero. However, the hero has already defied the virtuous authority in the demon village and made a decision contrary to justice at the casino. Now, if he gives up just one qualification, he will no longer be a hero. Kim and Edward both converse in Japanese so that no one can understand them. While riding the friction, the protagonist wonders why the prince is trying to kill the hero so much. Just then, the prince confesses that this was not his original plan. He was merely carrying out his old father's plan. That is all. That damned bastard, the king, appointed Maeda as his successor, and he, the second son. The plan was to make him Wang Yi's advisor. So the king told the hero to remain a hero. They devised a plan to make him lose his title by forcing him to choose whether to succeed to the throne or not. However, fearing the goddess's wrath, he ultimately did not carry out the plan. For some reason, Edward accidentally discovered his plan, but he admits that he had a really hard time breaking the seal. So, after making some modifications in his own way, he is currently implementing those plans. plans. Understanding what he is trying to say says that this is not the answer to his question. I want to know why the prince wants to kill the hero, and it doesn't seem like there is an enemy worthy of killing him. It is visible. Yes, the evil prince, if his older brother the hero dies, the old. He confides that the despair his father will feel will surpass his own sadness. At that moment, they were at the Demon King's castle. We arrive at a flat plain that appears to be the place. But the prince is a video. He thinks it is strange that in the game, the Demon King's castle is always surrounded by lava or in the middle of an isolated area. While they think it is strange to be in the middle of a plain, the protagonist considers this region absurd and wonders who would establish a capital here. This leads them to believe that something is wrong. And Kim notices that there is literally nothing around him, not even a single insect. The prince wondered what on earth happened here. While wondering, the protagonist seems convinced that there is something ahead of them. Suddenly, the horse lets out a loud roar, stops in its tracks, trembling in fear, and refuses to move forward any further. As the hero emerges, the prince investigates why the horse is afraid when there is nothing around. Thinking that the horse might be tired, the hero gets a strange feeling and wonders if it is because of the castle. Meanwhile, his younger brother asks what is wrong. The hero shakes off the feeling, claiming that although he did sense something strange, he doesn't know exactly what it is. He says that if he gets closer to the castle, he might be able to find out, but words can do nothing like that. Once the horse stopped, it refused to take even a single step again. The first prince tried to soothe the horse by feeding it grass, but the horse refused to eat. The second prince even used healing magic in case the horse was injured, but there were no physical problems. On the other hand, the protagonist tried to scare the horse, but it only began to tremble more severely. Finally, the hero passionately spoke about the importance of defeating the Demon King, but the horse did not budge. Since they could do nothing, they decide to spend the night here. As soon as Edward untied the horse to watch it, he kicks him and runs away at the risk of his life. The hero senses something, draws his sword, and warns that they are already surrounded when a strange voice is heard. The voice muttered that it was terribly disappointing to see who the hero was associating with, calling the prince dull and unguarded. Furthermore, his detection ability was so miserable that it was worse than any other creature. The devil. I wondered how they had managed to survive this far. The hero told the demon to reveal himself. Speaking, the demon wonders if there is a need for that and lifts the magic gathering device to strike the ground with all his might. As the ground shakes due to this, they think it is an earthquake. However, everything became clear as thousands of undead suddenly burst out of the ground. And the demon general reveals that his name is Richmond, and that he is one of the 4 heavenly kings and the one who will stop them. And Richmond Anbirad, also known as Jealousy, is described as having served the demon kingdom for a longer period than anyone else, specifically for 200 years. He has fought 2 heroes and served 3 demon lords so far. 200 years. For half of that time, he maintained the position of Chancellor's attendant within the royal office. This was a crucial role that oversaw operations both within and outside the kingdom. Such a task was impossible even for a demon, who possesses a lifespan twice as long as a human's. However, it is revealed that he is undead, but this did not mean something like a zombie or a skeleton. He wasn't even an unstable undead like a vampire that used blood to survive. He was a lich, a top-tier undead being who could never die as long as the reliquary containing his soul and power remained intact. After experiencing death once, he became more powerful than ever, and now his arrogance knew no bounds. Neither the generals of Songhan nor the demon king himself dared to oppose him, until the events of that day when the heroes of the previous generation invaded the demon king's castle and Richmond summoned an army of the undead from the plains to stop them. That is what I mean. However, they were all annihilated by the hero's empty magic, and he himself was killed by the hero. By the time Richmond's body was restored from the reliquary, the hero had already defeated the demon king and left. After that incident, as other demons began to speak ill of him, calling him selfish and arrogant, Richmond's pride hit rock bottom. If someone else had been in that situation, they would have silenced them with their own strength and soothed their wounded pride. However, Richmond was not like that at all. He was a genius wizard. He did not engage in such a cowardly act as blaming others for his failures. Instead, as a researcher, he investigated the cause of his defeat. The main cause of his defeat was the hero's rain magic. It was impossible for his undead army not to be weakened by his empty magic. For 4 years, Richmond attempted to grant himself immunity to his undead army and the light of flesh, and as a result, he became very strong. Conversely, the saint and the hero were perplexed as to why they could not detect the undead. The undead emit a primordial vision of the living that can be detected, yet they sensed nothing. Meanwhile, the saint could not even sense a baby among them, despite her use of divine magic. Nevertheless, the hero instructs her to use divine magic. As she cast divine magic, the undead were unaffected and instead ended up with a scar, so it leaves them astonished. They realize that her magic actually healed them. After that, the devil decided to reveal the interesting part he had been hiding and place the magic gathering on the ground. He strikes down and surprisingly uses divine magic. The undead. The hero was going crazy at the sight of divine magic being used. The saint was in shock. Meanwhile, Richmond reveals his secret, calling it a small gift for them, and takes out a Bible in the temple. With a suspicious look, the saint recognized it and asked how it was obtained. When asked, the demon replies that it is obvious that he is a disciple of the temple. In fact, all the undead on this plane, including himself, are disciples of the temple. Therefore, they harbor no hatred or resentment toward the living. Upon hearing this, the saint thinks it is absurd that an undead is a disciple in the temple. Meanwhile, the devil, far from being offended, actually finds it amusing and mocks her for starting her journey as a saint 10 years ago. Richmond reveals that he was a disciple at the temple long before she was born and read the Bible over and over again to build resistance to divine magic. He asked how dare anyone call his devotion to his temple absurd, stating that he has practiced the deeds of many saints. He says to her that 10 years of devotion to them is beginner. It is a level, and given the level of devotion she currently possesses, she points to an ugly undead enemy and says that it would be merely at the level of a small undead. Angry that the saint compared her devotion to the undead, the devil further reveals that emotions such as hatred and resentment stem from jealousy toward the living. However, through faith, Richmond was able to overcome the jealousy ingrained deep in his bones. Having conquered jealousy, Richmond calls himself the general of pure and complete jealousy. As if in disbelief, the saint argues that the undead do not meet the standards for natural life forms set by the temple, and that beings like them could not possibly believe in the temple. Richmond replies that there is nothing in this world untouched by the goddess's hand, and that every little thing harbors the seed of devotion. He goes further, noting that since the bodies of the undead were created by the goddess and resurrected by magic regulated by her, it is not impossible for them to have faith. Realizing that the devil had just spoken a verse from the Bible, the saint is horrified and mutters, even if the devil has faith, the goddess would never bestow the power of divine light upon such evil beings. However, Richmond shocks her once again by quoting another passage and adding that it is not surprising that the goddess bestows the power of the divine light upon so-called evil beings like himself, who have turned toward the pure light. Sensing the intimidation of the devil's knowledge, the saint acknowledges that he was not wrong and speculates that this fellow must surely be a devout believer in the temple. To deceive him, she asks Richmond to make way, claiming that they are delivering a sacred message sent directly by the goddess. However, the devil says that she cannot deny earthly laws under the pretext of heavenly laws, and in his territory. It is clearly stated that since it has entered, the law of heaven is null and void, and even if the goddess claims that his actions were wrong, he decided to serve the demon king. He swore, saying that there was enough talk now. Richmond closed the Bible. He orders his undead demons, who have waited long enough, to kill them. The demons toward them. As they rush forward, the saint casts a holy barrier, but surprisingly, the demons break through the barrier and attack her. Just as an undead zombie is about to devour the girl, someone casts an empty spell to blow the demon away. It was Prince Edward who saved her with a shield of light. He shouts at Saint Angela to come to her senses. Watching Edgar fight monsters, Angela remembers Edgar from when she was young. He flushes as he recalls the past when he was protected from wolves. However, she shakes off the thought and remembers that as a saint, she must not harbor private feelings. And she joins the prince, who seems happy to see her return. Meanwhile, Power seemed to be resting in the carriage, and one demon. When he interferes, he hits him with his arm or hand. Worried, the hero asks if he is alright, and our friend jumps out of the carriage. Relieved that he is still safe, the hero warns him that empty magic does not work on these undead monsters. Without caring at all, him stepped forward to fight the zombies. The warrior is awakened by his daring actions. He is surprised. A real monster appears on the scene, and without a moment's hesitation, our protagonist attaches the devil's arm. He tears them apart and kills them as if nothing happened. Power reveals that demons shatter when struck, leaving the hero dumbfounded. He seems obsessed with the idea that the undead must fight with empty magic, and all he has to do is swing his sword more. Saying that they were not the Demon King's subordinates, the hero leaped toward them, declaring that his holy sword would be a formidable force. He thinks, assuming that the undead, being immune to empty magic, will rise again even if wounded, this powerful friend plans to destroy them, adding that while ordinary swords would break, his holy sword would not. Meanwhile, Angela appears to be knocking down the monsters with powerful punches. As the Pope of the Temple said 1,000 years ago, her 2 fists were more than enough for humble priests to defend themselves. Meanwhile, Edward is ashamed that he cannot use his specialty, empty magic, but it seems he has another way to use magic. Watching them smash the undead zombies, Kim thinks they are doing better than he thought. However, seeing that there seem to be too many for them to handle, he decides to transform into a dragon and join the battle to end this fight quickly. Richmond watches them struggling against an endless army of undead and threatens them, saying that even if they wipe out 1,000 men, they will not make up even 1% of his entire army and will soon join his own undead army. However, when the dragon breathed fire at his army, his pride crumbled in an instant, and the old man began to question his life decisions. It works. While the flames spread, the dragon carries the hero's companions and glides through the sky. As Angela and the hero are shocked by the dragon's sudden transformation, the power informs them that it will head straight to the Demon King's castle. The suspicious warrior looked at Edward, who remained completely unfazed, and began to suspect that he had known everything from the beginning. He asks the prince if Lord Kim is a dragon, but Edward denies it. They asked him for an explanation, and at that time, the prince said that he could not reveal the true nature of the power because he was bound by an oath. Eddie states that Kyung Kim's background is different from that of any other human being. He also says that she is dangerous enough to turn the whole world against her and refuses to say any more. Meanwhile, the warrior ponders the fact that Kim can transform into a dragon and has a unique background, and concludes that he is a shapeshifter. The shocked warrior asks the prince if he is a shapeshifter, but Eddie says nothing. The troubled warrior, thinking that the shapeshifter's transformation is a unique skill possessed by a type of demon, speculates that Kim Kyung is either a demon who betrayed his own race or a woman born between a demon and a human. In summary, the hero recalls his past death at the hands of a monster and suspects that Kim might be the monster he destroyed. However, he remembers that he helped defeat the demon generals and just saved them from the undead, reminding himself that he had already defeated the monster of destruction with his own 2 hands. The hero stopped doubting the very kind Mr. Kim and thought that he could never be a monster of destruction. He believes. As he approaches the Demon King's castle, the hero is surprised that he covered that distance in 30 minutes and glances at the castle, which looks quite ordinary. When the dragon tells them to look behind them, they all see an army of undead following them, and the adult estimates that they will be caught within 2 hours based on the distance. Calculating the time, the hero tries to figure out if it is possible to defeat the Demon King and escape by riding on Kim's back. He suspects that there is not enough time to execute this plan, and if the Demon King is not killed before the undead swarm in what happened before will repeat itself. Just then, the warrior makes a request to the dragon, and while Kim Kyung lands on the ground, the 3 of them rush toward the castle. A demon guarding the castle spots human soldiers. He orders the other soldiers to stop the intruders, warning them that they are heading toward the castle. Just as the demon soldiers attempt to catch up with them, someone sprays a sticky purple liquid at the demons. An explosion occurs near the castle gate in an instant, and the dragon flees far away. It is revealed that Kim had stored Inasung fuel inside his body that explodes at the slightest spark. It appears that Kim caused the explosion to prevent the soldiers from opening the castle gates and to keep the undead out until the fire was extinguished. On the other side, Richmond witnesses the explosion and curses the dragon, grinding his teeth in rage as he watches the dragon fly away. The devil speculates that he might be Stuckpit's dragon, capable of breathing fire several times a day, and wonders if Sloth was killed by him. The enraged demon Jangu feels threatened by the dragon's presence and the undead. 3 weaknesses are mentioned. It is weak to light magic, becomes vulnerable to sunlight, and decays over time. It is revealed that Richmond overcame his first weakness through faith. For the second, it did not matter when the sun set. And regarding his third weakness, he removed moisture from his body to prevent decay, but it dried them out like firewood, plunging the monsters into danger. Although fire resistance can be used to reduce the damage, it will not work against the dragon's fire breath. From a few feet away from the castle, jealousy speculates that even if they try to enter, they will only serve as firewood to aid the dragon and be of little help to the king. He entrusts the king's protection to Sejiok and prepares to defeat the dragon. Conversely, the heroes Angela and Edward fight demon soldiers as they enter the castle. When they were about to enter the manger, someone appears destructively on the scene and blocks the hero's path. It was Sejiok, the last demon general, and he said that this was all they could go. He says, Julius Rustad, also known as the third case, is rough. It is revealed to us that he is a muscular, physically strong male demon and an incubus. We then move on to his recollections from 10 years ago. The incubus in that instance was a mid-level magic-type demon that seduced humans and drained their energy. Since their talent lay in magic, they did not need to cultivate true physical strength. Incubi are naturally pretty boys and handsome men, so they avoid building excessive muscle. Likewise, the 3 classes are also growing in size. He avoided it, but for some reason, he acquired a huge muscular body and attacked with brute force instead of magic. It all started 10 years ago. Amidst memories of separation and loss, Yunlius was overly confident in his appearance. To the warrior who rushes at him while he reflects on a sad sad story from the past. His recollection is interrupted by the muscular man gets angry at being interrupted in the middle of his flashback scene and throws a large rock at the hero, but this friend shatters the large rock into pieces with his holy sword. Swinging his sword, the hero delivers the final blow. He struck, and the demon dramatically collapsed, hitting the ground 3 times. The devil contemplates the final moments of the sudden demise of the most powerful of the 4 heavenly kings. Considering his story, his end was inevitable. He did not take civilians hostage like arrogance and gluttony. It did not possess power like a huge monster such as anger and sloth. Did not say Gayak, who had no advantage even in the fight like greed, jealousy. He did not have a powerful army like the one he had. As a result, the warrior clearly had the upper hand in this one-on-one fight. Returning to the current scene, Edward tells the hero that he must leave. Meanwhile, Sejiak lies helplessly, mulling over the fact that he is destined to be defeated by the hero with his own strength alone, and breathes his last while apologizing to the Demon King. And so, the hero and the others finally arrive at the Demon King's castle. There will be a Demon King behind this door. Thinking, the hero opens the door and sees a young girl. Meanwhile, the dragon flies toward Richmond's undead army, plotting something terrible. The demon general suspects that Ayong is breathing fire at them and plans to send his army to the castle immediately. Meanwhile, the dragon's mouth is bulging with something. He descends toward the army at breakneck speed. The startled demon regains his senses and witnesses a dragon leaping toward them. As Richmond decides to cast fire resistance magic on his army, our guide drenches them in purple poison. Guessing it is poison, Richmond laughs slyly and mocks the dragon for thinking the poison would work on the undead. Relieved, the demon says there is nothing to worry about, thinking about the use to him. I agree. At that moment, our friend breathed fire and the devil is his. She laughs again, saying that the small flame breath is cute. However, his happiness turned into tragedy as a huge explosion occurred, and the devil cannot understand what just happened and is devastated. A fire triggered by a small amount of poison causes repeated explosions. During this time, the dragon reveals that this poison is virtually akin to flammable fuel and has the power of roughly 30 breaths of flame. And so the fire spread at the speed of light. The last great king burns to death jealousy. Finally, Richmond's sacred relic, the reliquary, is destroyed and he vanishes. In the end, we see Kim lying peacefully on the alcohol, oblivious to the situation. The flame covering the plains. An explosion is heard as the undead army burns to death along with their general. Kim, in the form of a dragon, wonders if this is the end of the undead army. Curious, he checks to see if the general is dead or not. Our protagonist doesn't call this a proper fight because it was too easy. He prepares his next move to eat the remaining soldiers without doing so. Thanks to his salamander skills, he can eat in the fire. Although they were there, he ultimately did not eat them because they were nothing more than corpses without any special skills. Therefore, he decides to eat what remains of the castle as he flies away. Upon entering the castle, he witnessed dead demons spread out all around, and then saw Sejiak, one of the 7 generals, and he saw that the warrior was his. Acknowledging that he lived up to his name, he was killed by the hero. He opened the Demon King's door but found only the prince and the hero pointing weapons at each other and arguing about something. Meanwhile, the hero is protecting a girl. It is the same. Edward questions his brother's actions. Upon raising the issue, the hero clearly states that humans and demons must coexist instead of killing each other. The adult is. He tries to calm both of them down and tells them to put down their weapons. Meanwhile, Kim asks the Demon King what happened and who that woman is, demanding an explanation of the situation. The hero thinks it would be dangerous to tell him the truth, but his thoughts are interrupted when the prince reveals that the woman hiding behind the hero is the Demon King and that the hero has given up on finding the person to kill her. The warrior asked Kim to listen to his story before taking action. He makes a request and says that this girl is not the Demon King. He tries to persuade him, but Kim becomes confused when he hears the hero say that this girl was not the Demon King in the past. The hero reveals that although she is inside the Demon King's body, her soul came from another world, and Kim thinks this is preposterous. Doing his best to make them believe him, the hero firmly states that the girl is not lying, as his lie detection technology proves that she is telling the truth. Upon hearing this, our protagonist realizes that the Demon King must be the third person to come from Earth and believes that the hero is telling the truth. As he pieces together the scattered fragments, he believes that Edward died once and was reborn in the body of another human in this world. He was Eddie Montoya's past life or reincarnation. On the other hand, Kim moved to this world with his body and soul intact. In other words, Kim was transferred to this world. This makes him question who the Demon King is. It is explained that for some reason, the Demon King's body became bin to someone from Earth. The Demon King became bin to an Earthling who was basically an ordinary office worker. She had no interest in socializing with others, so she preferred hobbies such as collecting venomous snakes or military artifacts. Therefore, when she became the demon lord, she did not take the new situation seriously because the cliché of entering another person's body was a common sight in novels she had read on Earth. Naturally, she believed her life as the demon lord was a dream, so she introduced the concepts of Earth's knowledge and technology systems into this world. This is the reason the demon kingdom prospered dramatically and the balance between humans and demons was broken, as well as the reason the goddess sent the hero. But she still refused to believe that all of this was reality. This was because she knew that, like the protagonist of a novel who was a demon lord, she would one day meet a hero. That is the reason. The only difference is that she was not the protagonist here. The generals she had disrespected died without accomplishing anything. And when General Yunlius, whom she had disrespected the most, was killed by the hero, then she finally accepted reality and opened her eyes again to the fear she had long forgotten. She appeared. She confessed everything to the hero, and now all she could do was beg for mercy. Afterwards, Kim tries to understand what the hero just said, explaining that the girl ordered her subordinates to cause chaos and is now surrendering out of fear. The hero interrupts, and our protagonist asks him if he really believes the nonsense about another world. The hero claims that it is hard to believe, but true. On the other hand, our cunning friend clearly believes him, but he had to pretend not to know. The poor hero feels heartbroken as he weeps, remembering how many lives have already been sacrificed and guaranteeing that the demon king tells the truth. He wants to put an end to this endless academy. At that moment, Edward's strength, looking and sending a signal. He draws his sword, approaches the hero, and declares that he has become Lee J-Day. As the hero collapses, he is bewildered by his younger brother's sudden change of attitude. Edward swings his sword at him. To defend himself, the hero attempts to block the attack with his own sword. However, as soon as the prince's sword clashes with his, it shatters into pieces. The evil younger brother, Edward, stabs his older brother, and the demon king stands right behind him. As a warrior, one must always be gentle, pure, and good. These may appear similar, but they can sometimes conflict. A warrior must overcome these moral dilemmas and derive the most ideal outcome, and that is what he has done so far. It is a matter of course. However, the villains of Kim and Edward violated the hero's good nature. In the first village where weapons were manufactured, the hero participated in the massacre of innocent civilians. In the casino, the hero did not punish the villains, but instead focused on saving his friends. Finally, he abandoned his character who was trying to protect the demon king. Essentially, he destroyed justice, the last quality required of a hero. And so all the sacred rules were broken. This meant that the hero was no longer just fair or good. So he was no longer a hero. Eddie is his brother. As he struck the hero and the demon king, blood dripped from his sword. Stay away. Remind your brother that he ceased to be a hero the very moment he decided to spare the demon king's life. Once he was no longer a hero, the unbreakable goddess's sword became no different from an ordinary sword. The warrior tried to say his last words but ultimately could not and collapsed to the ground. The adult witnessing the scene is horrified and asks the prince how he could kill the hero, then rushes to the corpse to treat him. However, Kim grabs her hand as she continues to treat the hero, and before she can do anything, she gets devoured by our protagonist. The scene shifts to Edward's flashback, where he was planning to kill the hero and only needed to add this one condition. However, before proceeding with the plan, they decided to deal with the saint first. Kim is the only one because she thinks Eddie likes her. I thought so, but the prince liked her too. However, I couldn't let the healer live who might save the hero's life. If the hero were no longer a hero, he would become my henchman, and Edward would have to part ways with the king. This meant that he would not be able to keep his contract with Kim either. As far as he knew, the saint's ability to clear away evil was beyond imagination. There was even a case where a saint of a previous generation cleared away something that looked like minced meat. Her ability to heal was enough to be called a miracle. The prince explains that since she is basically immortal, if he has to kill her, he must completely destroy her body. Thinking about how to do that, the prince winks at him and reminds him that there is a monster that can transform into a dragon and swallow a person whole, pointing right at Kim. Laughing wickedly, Kim said that he could do that without transforming, suggesting that the prince seems to be under a delusion. Speak up. Eddie says he's relieved that Kim is on his side because Kim's monstrous appearance is a bit scary. Acknowledging it, Kim worries that the saint might escape even after eating her. However, our protagonist has no reason to do so. Reassure him that it won't happen. What he swallows doesn't go up, it disappears somewhere else. They say that unless she is physically connected to his body, it will be impossible for her to get out, even though they don't know exactly where. Returning to the current scene, Edward asks Kim if he could eat the demon king's corpse, saying he doesn't want to leave it there. However, he refused, saying the demon king's skill was useless to him, and suggested that it would be better to leave the body as evidence in case the goddess appeared. Edward, how the goddess will grant the wish. While I was wondering, the room suddenly started to light up. Kim witnesses a cube that looks like some kind of system and finds himself teleported to another place. When asked if that is a goddess, the system answers yes. Our protagonist wonders if this is the goddess's true form because the statue didn't look like this. At that moment, the system reveals that the interface is designed to assume an ideal form based on the subject's subconscious. However, the subject is currently outside the system's control. Therefore, it was unable to select a suitable avatar. Let's ask what the goddess actually is. The system reveals that the word goddess is an acronym for the Great Organizational Design and Development Ecosystem Supervision System. It is responsible for the creation and maintenance of the world. Its key functions are skill and status management, monster creation, and soul reincarnation supervision, including. Deeply shocked, Kim realizes that the goddess is not a real being but a system, and thinks about whether this is the true form of the goddess. He begins to question the goddess, asking first why she came to this world. The system replies that it is because Earth is adjacent to this world. That is why, sometimes due to system errors, people like princes or demon kings end up crossing over. Secondly, he asks why the monsters of this world were created to resemble legendary creatures or creatures of Earth. The goddess replies that she was created by referencing creatures and monsters from adjacent worlds. He asks the goddess if there is a problem with them killing the hero, but surprisingly, the system reassures him that there is not at all. Kim is wide surprised and asks if he can make a wish as a reward for defeating the demon king, adding that in the process, he and the prince ended up killing the hero and Songryeol. Even though the system is aware of this fact, Kim wonders why she doesn't get angry about losing the one she chose. Then the goddess reveals that she has no emotions, much like how video games don't have a preference for save or load functions. He added that if the system had been able to hold a personal opinion on this matter, it would have appreciated Power's work. When our protagonist still couldn't believe it, the system revealed that the introduction of the hero system was intended to balance the relationship between humans and demons. It was a system designed to develop both societies through competition. However, the result was the exact opposite. After the introduction of the hero system, human and demon societies remained stagnant, with the exception of a few changes. Thanks to this incident, the goddess was able to halt the hero system, and from now on, there will be no heroes for either race. Upon hearing this, Power concluded that one race would be able to completely destroy the other, and there would be no competition. In response, the system replied that humanity is not composed of a single race, but rather of various races such as humans, elves, dwarfs, hybrids, and lizardmen. These races have formed alliances until now, but with the disappearance of the demons, they will begin to fight each other. Afterwards, having obtained all the answers and finally satisfied, Power decided to get to the main point and reminded the goddess that she had promised to grant wishes to those who participated in the quest. He asks the system if it can send him back to Earth. Our protagonist requests the system to send him back to Earth. However, the goddess refuses his request. She states that it is impossible and that it is forbidden to send a being who is already having a significant impact on this world. Wondering if his mere existence is influencing the world, Kim feels that he cannot make a wish to return to Earth. Realizing that he cannot return to Earth on his own, he asks the system for a way to return to Earth on his own. Say that Cheol is in the middle of something and tell the system to wait because Edward Grand Canteen is currently viewing that information. Upon hearing this, our protagonist feels relieved, believing that since Edward possesses this crucial information, he will keep his promise. With the solution to returning to Earth finally resolved, he moves on to the next challenge, becoming the most powerful creature in the world. Although he ate a dragon, that is merely one of millions of other creatures. He believes that no matter how strong a dragon is, it can be killed by a more powerful monster or a large human army. He plans to find more monsters with power similar to that of a dragon, desiring a being whose power transcends everything. He asks the goddess about a creature that transcends physical form and is simultaneously inaccessible to others. The system says that such organisms exist. Reveal it and directly transmit that information to me with your power. Feeling a massive amount of information flowing into his brain, he learns about creatures based on Earth's mythology. These creatures are currently in the developmental stage and cannot be countered by the cultural and technological capabilities of the Elmud continent. If he makes a wish, he will create one of these creatures. When it becomes possible, our protagonist has to choose a creature, but is confused about whether to choose the ability to move at 400 times the speed of light teleportation or the ability to create physical forms. He feels the temptation of all the extraordinary skills. However, Kim decides to save his wish. He said the reason these creatures have not yet been released into this world is that Elmud will respond. Explain that it is because they cannot, and this means that someday the people of Elmud will be able to fight these creatures. If he lets his guard down too quickly just because he has reached the summit, he will become complacent and lazy, which means that someday other creatures will catch up to him. However, if he becomes the ultimate predator, no creature or other being will be able to catch him. He believes that he cannot be destroyed and will be at the top. Besides, he hasn't eaten countless other creatures yet, and after he devours all creatures, he will be able to acquire this extraordinary skill later anyway. Kim informs the system that he will receive the reward for killing the Demon King later and asks if it won't refuse. Yoshi reassured him in a post that the compensation payment had been temporarily suspended and that the system would process it again if he requested it later. Afterwards, when Kim asks when he can return to his original state, the system replies that he can go whenever he wants and asks if he wants to wait for his colleague who is currently making a wish. However, our protagonist decides to return before Edward make a decision. A short while later, the prince returns to his original form and his partner, Kim, greets him. Wiping away his tears, Edward expresses his surprise, saying he never imagined the goddess would take on her form. Hearing this, Kim sees that the goddess is within the target's subconscious. Since he said it appears in an ideal form, I assume he is talking about Saint Angela. When our protagonist asks if he regrets causing her death, the prince clenches his fist tightly and confesses that he regrets it every single moment. However, he moves on from the moment of sadness and asks Kim if she isn't curious about what wish he made. When the prince says he obtained knowledge needed for the future, our protagonist, he interrupts him and cunningly claims that Edward must clearly possess knowledge of the method to return him to Earth. The prince calmly agrees with him, saying that he cannot allow such a monster to run rampant in a world that he will suffer. He adds that he has become too strong to kill him. Kim, who seems determined to return to Earth, asks the prince how he can get back. The prince replies that he feels as though Mageo's army could storm the Demon King's castle gates at any moment and says he will tell him everything on the way. It was revealed that the Demon King's plan mentioned by the four great kings at that time was a comprehensive reform of the Demon King. Distribution of status, introduction of new weapons and tactics, education on the importance of logistics, reform of war rituals in which subordinates take over command authority upon the death of a commanding officer. It was revealed that all her ideas came from reading books on military strategy, and that, as a result, massive reforms were implemented in the army and combat capabilities improved dramatically. They were able to threaten the survival of humanity even without the Demon King or his generals. The scene shifts to the Demon King's castle, and human soldiers appear endless. I am shooting arrows at the army. They dealt with him, but it is impossible for human soldiers to fight a massive majesty army wielding strange weapons never seen before. Feeling it, he wonders if this is truly the end of humanity. Just then, someone attacks the remaining troops, and it seems more reinforcements have arrived. Suddenly, the general soldier notices that someone has opened the castle's main gate and shouts to his fellow soldiers. When one of them informs him that it is the Third Night Order, the soldier recalls that the order is famous for being composed of completely useless nobles. At that moment, as the noble knights gallop on horseback, one of them, he decides to take the opportunity to show everyone how outstanding he is. However, unfortunately, he is killed by a demon's weapon. Don't do it. Meanwhile, seeing that a massive army was waiting, the general ordered his soldiers to frantically open the castle gates. Just as the soldiers were about to leave, they were attacked by demons. The general and his soldiers accept humanity's imminent extinction, believing it is all over. Just then, the soldiers witness something in the sky and are terrified to realize it is a giant dragon. It was Edward Grankentine and Mr. Kim who came to rescue them. The next scene is to the royal palace. A soldier reveals that Prince Edward has returned from the battle to bury the Demon King and defeated the entire army. The people admire the prince's great achievement, but the king wonders, as if unable to believe it, how the prince was able to destroy the entire demon army. Then, a soldier reveals that the prince arrived riding a dragon and that the dragon burned the entire army to death. Hearing such preposterous words, the king is completely shocked and finds it hard to believe that Edward controls a dragon. However, the soldier assures him that he is telling the truth, confesses that he witnessed everything with his own eyes, and says it was truly amazing. Realizing that the truth cannot be denied, and watching people praise the prince as a hero of humanity, the king wonders if I think that if you keep doubting the prince's achievements, people will doubt your own insight. The king finally acknowledges his son's amazing success in front of the people. Then, he thinks that the prince cannot become a hero of humanity because he is just like himself. The king believes that since Edward's talent and skills are genuine, he might have delivered the final blow in the battle against the Demon King. However, the deaths of the hero and the holy knights did not make sense to him, and the king speculates that the prince killed them, thinking that he would have done the same thing if he were in their place. Even though I thought it was only natural for Edward to kill the hero, the king, because being of royal blood is a reward for devotion and loyalty to the goddess. Guess whether the prince carried out his plan without being unpunished. Therefore, by killing the hero, Edward committed an unforgivable sin. Although he had committed the act, the prince left no trace of punishment from the heavens. The high praise for the prince's park was greater than for any warrior chosen by the temple, and even those who had supported the princess now turned to the prince. No matter how much the king thinks about it, he only feels that it is even more preposterous. Nevertheless, the king eventually accepts the truth and his son's achievements. Thinking that he might have been too harsh on the child, he believes the prince has changed. After the prince's dramatic return, it is revealed that he did not come back to Santo El Meroas. Instead, he flew across the kingdom, wiping out the remnants of the demon army. As a result, the nobles who were once hostile to him now came to praise him as a hero. A few days later, Edward in Santo El Meroas. The prince receives an enthusiastic welcome from the people. While everyone was busy preparing for Arian, only Mr. Kim and Edward didn't care about anything. Meanwhile, the prince says that the king is wary of Kim and that he must have made an impression when they first met. However, our protagonist, who has no interest in gaining glory or honor, asks the prince if he is certain about the seating arrangement, and Edward mutters that he is certain because he obtained the information directly from the goddess. Afterwards, Kim leaves, and the prince wishes him good luck. When the bell rang, Prince Edward, entering the palace honorably under escort. I made eye contact with the king. The king is inwardly flustered, wondering if it is right to believe that the prince has changed after the mission. It's the same. Just then, when one of the soldiers demanded the prince's sword, Edward, extend the hand of the sword and hand it to the soldier. Sheathing the sword, the soldier recalled the king's order to kill the prince immediately if he attempted to draw his sword, and Edward. The prince kneels before his father and asks how he is doing, what the king learned from him on the journey. When asked, the prince replied that he had learned about the sacrifices the king made for his people and realized the weight of the crown he wore. As the king was speechless and the prince stood up, his father shouted at him, saying you didn't order him to stand up. With a grin, the prince casts a spell to retrieve his sword and tells his father that he has realized what he must do from now on, adding that the king no longer needs to make sacrifices or bear the weight of the crown. As fear engulfs the king, he asks his son what he is doing, and the prince draws his sword, declaring that he is succeeding to the throne. The terrified king shouted at the prince. The soldiers surrounded Edward with their weapons. Just then, Edward casts a spell to create a blade of light, a gambit of light, and a shield of light. When a soldier tries to stop him, the prince mercilessly stabs him and beheads them all. The old man, terrified to the point of death, cries out that it is treason, realizes he was a fool, and thinks that this fellow has changed. However, he believes the king had already anticipated this and deployed his own assassins of justice. He presses the button to signal the assassins, but no one responds, so the old man turns around and orders the people to call for reinforcements. Strangely, he witnesses them snickering and realizes that something is wrong. The king, terrified as if possessed and about to die, is bewildered. The scene shifts to King, who talks about the creatures he ate, mentioning that gluttony was the most devoured among them. The gluttonous was a parasite capable of surviving without a host, and multiple individuals were mixed together to form a single consciousness. Surprisingly, he had the power to control all entities even if he was separated from the rest. King struggled to control his parasitic abilities. However, after devouring the entire demon city and stuck it became much easier to control as his technology advanced. Furthermore, after infecting a host, this thing can manipulate their emotions and erase their memories. About the new technology, he told the prince. To put it simply, he devised a plan to brainwash the king's men. The king agreed, but emphasized that the king might find out. Edward reassured him that it wouldn't be complicated. They say all you have to do is stimulate their frontal lobes and amplify their ability to empathize with themselves. Then, they will feel vicarious satisfaction whenever he achieves something. Just then, our protagonist used his own egg to supply the water supply, using the same method the demons used. Contaminate and start infecting the palace. Returning to the present scene, amidst blood splattering everywhere, Edward walks forward holding a knife as the old man. How he killed his mother and to kill himself. Whether they sent an assassin and sent Angela to the temple. Expose his wrongdoings. Facing his father, he wants to hear answers to many things, but decides to do so later. At that moment, Prince Edward plunges his sword straight into his father's chest, the old man's. Blood flows from his body and mouth. He hopes that a special place is prepared for his son in hell. Look, as he breathed his last, the prince drew his sword and the king. He is eliminated as he falls from the throne. Meanwhile, the heartless son grabs the king's cloak and someone bursts into the palace. It seems to be the guy who was killed by Kim. Afterwards, our protagonist informs the prince that it is over, and Edward succeeds in his plan to remove all the trash from the palace. Filled with pride, he puts on the crown and sits on the throne, and now more. He mutters that nothing can block his path. Then the crowd applauded their new king, who sat on the prince covered in his father's father's blood. Later at the palace, King Edward appears to be talking to his dead brother. You know what you came to tell him, right? It was revealed that the wish Edward made to the goddess at that time was knowledge in its purest form. Using this, he was able to provide Kim Kyung with the locations of the people he needed to eliminate. And among the knowledge he gained was the last words his brother had failed to finish. The warrior's words warn him not to cross the line. The prince rises from his seat and tells the hero that it is too late, saying he should have spoken before shaking hands with that monster. He orders the hero to vanish from his sight, casts a spell to destroy the hero's illusion, and wakes up through his imagination. Thinking of the future, Edward tells the hero that the world he knew is now gone. There are no more fools left to cling to the facade of humanity. While preparing for danger from within, Edward must pay the price for having come this far with the help of that monster. The prince speculates that the king of the elves, the king of the dwarves, the king of the hybrids, and the king of the lizardmen will be needed to return Kim to Earth. Edward reveals that they will offer their heads to the shrine sealed in the temple's dungeon, and that this will bring about an era of war and chaos. The next scene turns to Kim, and he seems to be writing about how the prince drove out the evil king, claimed the prince, and ruled the kingdom for a long time. As the protagonist closes the book, saying that part of the fantasy world food journey is over, Edward. Out of curiosity, I ask what he was writing. It turns out our protagonist decided to return to Earth, kill Eddie's former comrades, and live under a different name, writing and publishing a book. He adds that he will sell the book because he won't be able to earn money like before. Kim further reveals that he titled it Fantasy World Food Travel because it is a story about eating various things in a fantasy world. However, the king said that a book would not sell with such a title, and the more he ate. I suggest a more intuitive title like Getting Stronger. Kim, who doesn't care about the title, said that although he is good at eating, he is bad at writing, so he will hire a ghostwriter anyway. Speak. Meanwhile, Edward asks what you will do if the book fails. Our friend grins and says that the story's details will be incredible because he experienced everything firsthand. Convinced, Kim predicts that his book will become a bestseller because it will turn into a 3-part blockbuster fantasy movie series. However, the king shook his head worriedly and discussed how to send him back to Earth. Before Eddie even starts, Kim already knows that the heads of the kings of each race must be offered as sacrifices and asks if that is possible. Edward took the documents from the drawer. He makes it clear that it will be different from chasing the Demon King. He explains that while it might be possible to pursue each king with the forces of justice, their successors will seize the throne, pursue them to punish human arrogance, form alliances, and invade. Each race, elves are capable of fire rituals and magic. Handle it. Dwarf's blacksmithing reaches the realm of magical greatness. It reached a point where the physical abilities of hybrids and lizard men surpass those of humans. Mentioning their special technology, Edward argues that even with numerical superiority, he is no match for them. He also warns that if they form an alliance, the king will be beheaded. However, he decides that for now, the king will establish stability, centralize power, and unite all nations to fight against other races. As the king hands the list of documents to Kim, he look through them and ask if they are making you do their dirty work. Just then, Eddie reveals that it is a proposal and tells him to look at the back. As Kim turns the paper over, he realizes it is a map of spring, and his face lights up with delight. He scans the locations of various exotic species, and to him, it is like a feast. When the younger brother liked the gift, the king who succeeded him appointed him as a top-secret royal investigator. When Kim asked in surprise if such a position existed in the kingdom, he reveals that he created this as well, just as he had created the secret guardian knights. He then reassures Kim that, unlike the knights, he can become an investigator who maintains power while traveling freely. The protagonist, having received the badge, thinks it is a pretty good deal. After all, he gains the freedom to act freely outside the kingdom and a treasure map, and in return, he just needs to eliminate the king's enemies. As Kim prepares to leave for the sake of the character, Eddie, he announces that the coronation will be held around this time next year, so they must return by then, adding that he does not want rumors to spread that the two heroes who defeated the Demon King are on bad terms. Afterwards, the protagonist leaves the room, wondering where to start. Plan to use information efficiently. Nevertheless, Kim seems certain of one thing, that he would be much stronger than before once he finished this journey. One of the guards told the prince that Kim is the most powerful. He was a warrior, so they ask if it would be alright for him to leave. It implies that his absence could pose a threat to national security. However, Edward dismisses it as nonsense. He says he keeps him by his side precisely to prevent such a thing from happening, hiding above his room for the prince's safety. The one in question is the assassin commander. He is the commander of the Royal Assassination Corps, a unit directly under the king. The question is how Prince Edward took control of the Royal Assassination Squad when he assassinated the former king. In fact, it is revealed that the late King Edward Edward IV had planned to hand over the royal assassination squad to Edward. While the eldest son ascended to the throne, the second son was to assume the role of prime minister and leader of the royal assassination squad, eliminating enemies from the shadows. That was the king's plan. However, because the eldest son was raised too uprightly, he became a hero instead. The king's plan failed, and only a part of it was carried out. For some reason, the royal assassination squad was made to pledge loyalty not only to the current Gugu but also to Prince Edward. He was brainwashed. However, that condition was fulfilled when the prince inherited the possessions the king had been holding. Originally, the king planned to bequeath the royal assassin leader's signet ring, but Edward took the crown instead. Thus, the prince inherited the king's possessions, and the royal assassins came to serve their new master. It happened. Fortunately, Edward was one of the armies that could enter the kingdom. They completely took over the other armies and the Royal Medical Corps, all thanks to brainwashing parasites. Returning to the present, the prince believes that if the monster Kim leaves the kingdom, the effects of the parasite will also disappear. He intends to win everyone in the kingdom over to his side before that happens. And as is often said, what binds humans is profit-seeking and guilt. The prince seems to be plotting an evil plan. He freezes. The scene shifts to Kim. He worries that the full-body robe he received from the prince might attract too much attention. Furthermore, since this gabbit has become a symbolic figure of Kim Kyung-hae, it does not suit an investigator working in the shadows. He does not. In the end, the protagonist orders a new set of gabbits and seems impressed by his new appearance. Leaving the political world, the protagonist leaves the palace when it is time for adventure. The next scene turns to Kim. He monologues that he is now known as the prince's loyal servant and the one who defeated the Demon King. However, on Earth, he was nothing more than a notorious criminal and an internationally wanted fugitive. Because he was constantly on the run from the police and secret organizations, he didn't have much that he could call a hobby of his own. He had no interest in sports or video games, and although interacting with others could lead someone to discover his secrets, he could not let them go. As a result, he lost his second and third identities. It turned out that our monster's ideal hobby was reading. I was most interested in novels that begin and end in a single volume. At first, I reluctantly accepted reading as a hobby, but later I fell in love with it. Well, it is surprising that a hideous monster likes reading novels. Unfortunately, this world is backward in culture and civilization. Only the family can possess books. Fortunately, our protagonist is able to obtain a book through the prince, despite its trashy quality. However, there is still hope. Even if there is no interesting story written by someone else, the interesting story told by someone else, there is. Later, before a woman discovered writing, how human stories end. He speaks of how knowledge was passed down through songs and persuades the crowd to preserve the precious stories taught to the children by wise village elders and to enroll in the bard school. Inspired by these words, a girl named Felina Green-Smith becomes an aspiring bard, but later regrets her decision. Due to a strange turn of events, she becomes a wandering bard and calls herself a fool for having trusted that fraudulent bard school. Felina is not happy that her life has turned out this way, but she believes that people only want to hear glamorous adventures rather than the humble tales of the heroes of the past. Ultimately, the bard is nothing more than a jester who entertains the crowd with exaggerated stories, and this is the bard. I conclude that it was not the reason I wanted to become a poet. Regretting her decision, Felina enters a bar in Santo Pop. Hearing the loud noise, she glances at the small mercenary and the adventurer, who turns out to be none other than our protagonist. She sees someone with a cloak wrapped around their face and thinks they are just a drunkard, but upon seeing the well-made gabbit, she thinks that they might be someone involved in trouble, so it would be best not to get involved. After that, she decides to sing for adventurers and mercenaries. Felina carefully selects her songs, believing that the two tend to underestimate each other. A wrong song choice could lead to a fight, and that would mean saying goodbye to Tip. And the girl, as if drawing a trump card, announces that she will sing the song The Serpent Prince and the Dragon's Counternight to the Demon Dragon. As soon as she does so, the mercenaries turn their attention to her, remarking that the young lady knows a thing or two about heroic tales. As she sings, Felina thinks that she realized this song would be a moneymaker, and still, she glances at the tip of her heels at the people who seem to be enjoying her song. Soon, the poor girl begins to get tired of singing the same song over and over, but since your income depends on this, let it feel like the highlight of the song is approaching. And she sings about how the prince witnessed the death of his brother, the warrior. What he felt was not despair, but sorrow. Suddenly, in the middle of the song, a mercenary grabs a man sitting in a tavern and calls him an arrogant bastard. When Felina reveals that the man is the adventurer Kim amidst the sudden commotion, the mercenary seems desperate to die. Meanwhile, our protagonist, Hee-ju, freezes. The muscular mercenary asks him if the story of the prince is funny and calls him a dirty traitor to the kingdom. The fellow mercenaries snicker unpleasantly and begin making jokes about the adventurer, saying he serves him right. With the flow interrupted, Felina wonders if the fight is taking place between the mercenaries and a single adventurer and predicts that the mercenaries will win. She plans to sing about the threat posed by the valiant mercenaries in her next song to boost their morale and get them to open their wallets. Suddenly, she heard a sound, and the protagonist was a mercenaries, twisting the arms and sticking 3 into the ground. He watches as his fellow mercenaries rush at that bastard. Kim mercilessly defeats them. Meanwhile, Felina, terrified and feeling her life is in danger, immediately runs out of the pub and flees desperately. She thinks it was a crazy thing to do and realizes this is going to cause a big mess, so she hurries to run away before getting caught up in it. However, in this incident, Felina's actions were wiser than anyone else in Santo Fabro. The scene shifts back to the tavern. Kim sings a song about how the hero's power empowered the prince, and pointing at Edward, he laughs uncontrollably at the thought that the brat is steeped in deep sorrow. Just as the protagonist was enjoying this rare moment of happiness, those mercenaries ruined it. As he was strangling one of the men who seemed to be begging for mercy, someone appeared and said to Kim, "It asks that violence not be used in a terrible way." Stepping forward, she removes her cloak and tells Kim to stop bullying the weak. The girl wearing the gablet introduces herself as the Paladin Pure Creed and declares that she will not tolerate this. She appears to be drunk. As Kim gazes at the city of the goddess insignia on the clothes stained with black and slate, it seems the one approaching him is a paladin. Recalling the few things the prince had told him about this place, he remembers that the paladins are known as one of the city's asymmetric forces. That place it is the city of the goddess, and it looks as if it were modeled after the Batik era of Earth, and it is revealed that the small city possesses numerous superhumans. One of the key asymmetric forces is the saintess who accompanied Kim on his previous journey. The protagonist explains that her skeleton was infused with magical steel blessed by the temple. With extremely compressed muscles and eyesight and reflexes surpassing those of ordinary humans, she was undoubtedly an officially recognized human weapon. However, creating a single saintess requires an enormous amount of time and resources. Even with donations and hunger pouring in from around the world, only one saintess could be produced every 10 years. It was a cost befitting a weapon made by a human equal to a hero. This is precisely why the paladin was created. It is an effective method devised by the city of the goddess to create superhumans. A paladin is a modified human created through magic and blessings, just like a saint. The resources required to create one paladin are 1/200th of those for a saint, and the time it takes to deploy them into battle is only 2 out of 5th of that for a saint. After establishing the system, the city can mass-produce about 12 paladins at a time, but their performance is inferior to that of the saintess. It is as if the saintess were the latest model of tank, while the holy knights were a swarm of old mass-produced tanks. Even so, humans would win in a battle against tanks. It does not matter whether they are old or new. As the holy knight approaches Kim, who is strangling a man, he thinks that she looks ridiculously weak compared to the hero or the saintess, so he could kill her easily. However, he stops his impure thoughts at the thought that he does not want to antagonize the city of the goddess so early. He lets go of the man, who runs away, and asks her if she is satisfied now. The flustered paladin says that he did not expect things to go so smoothly, as those who bully the weak do not listen to him. However, the protagonist clearly states that she has misunderstood the situation. He says he merely responded to this karma because the perpetrators attacked him first. The holy knight, more shocked than ever, flushed with embarrassment, and Kim remarked that her behavior was such cheap clowning that he didn't even want to pay. He speaks. While he is brushing off his clothes, the paladin orders another beer to avoid the awkward situation and leaves shyly. After that, Kim thinks he has rested enough and leaves the bar for his appointment. It is revealed through Pop that Baekjangryong was one of the territories that did not suffer significant damage from the Demon King's invasion because it had no strategic value whatsoever. At that time, the Demon King formulated a strategy focused on attacking key territories to neutralize the enemy. As for Pop, Baekjangryong was not viewed as a threat by the Demon King because it lacked technological capabilities and had a sparse population, resulting in low production. However, the situation changed after the war. Subsequently, refugees from other territories flocked to Baekjangryong, increasing the labor force. Surviving mercenaries also fled to this unspoiled land for rest. As demand surged, the economy flourished with new restaurants and accommodations. This city entered its first period of prosperity. However, not all changes were positive as Baekjangryong adopted this peculiar class system due to the sudden increase in outsiders. The lowest class consisted of refugees who had fled empty-handed, while the middle class was composed of the original refugees from Pop. The highest ranks were occupied by mercenaries, who are currently the biggest problem. Because they know they are the reason for economic growth, they strut through the streets of pop culture as a class at home. They solved all problems crimes with force or money, and there were no authorities to stop them. With Pop, Baek Jang-ryung was interested only in competitions to fill his own stomach and himself. He no longer cared about public order or society. There was nothing. Concluding that this was the current state of affairs in Santo Pop, the prince's royal assassin explains everything to Kim and asks when he will take action. The protagonist informs him that he could do it right now, but he was ordered to do so in 30 minutes. Agreeing to give a signal when the time comes, Kim steps out onto the street but stops after overhearing the conversation. A mercenary holding a man captive shouts, "Who is the one who challenged the Crimson Gale mercenaries?" That man was the person Kim had let go at the bar earlier. While assessing the situation and deciding to move the plan forward, the shouting mercenary thinks he hates dealing with these troublesome things. However, if he does not handle this situation, his subordinates will look down on him. He speculates that the fact that only one person survived a 4-on-1 fight means that the opponent is strong enough to be dangerous, whoever they may be. The mercenary, appearing frightened, thinks that if he is threatened by numbers, that guy will not show up. He decides to boost his subordinates' morale by declaring his opponent a coward, intending to end the night with a drinking spree. He takes a deep breath, puts on a brave face, and begins shouting, but a drunk man appears and interrupts him, telling him to shut up. The drunk man mutters that this is Santo Pop, their city, and not a place for an outsider like him to roam freely. While the drunkard frightens him for a moment, the mercenary devises a plan to finish this drama with this fool and retreat. He orders his subordinates to teach him a lesson. Following their boss's orders, they resolve to ensure that drunkard never raises his voice again. Unexpectedly, an arrow strikes the man squarely in the chest, causing him to collapse, and the mercenary. He shouts in terror, claiming he never ordered the killing. Suddenly, they hear the voices of residents condemning the mercenaries who killed the man. They say that such thugs can no longer be allowed to roam the streets. The voice continues to ring out, demanding that their city be reclaimed from these mercenaries. The panicked mercenaries realize they have just been ruined. Meanwhile, the drunk man struck by the arrow is revealed to be Kim, and Heju freezes like a monster. We return to Kim's flashback. A scene is revealed where Prince Edward, the rightful successor to the fallen kingdom of Kanti, evaluated the Count based on his Pop. The prince, calling the Count a bastard of the Redeemer in Pop and cursing him. It explains that up until my grandfather's reign, Poplo was one of the most famous counties. However, that place became a cesspool after only 2 or 3 generations. I thought that if you tell your parents at a young age, you are bound to learn, but that Count is 50 years old this year yet still has the mental state of a 12-year-old and has no abilities. The prince calls him a fool and decides that he will be the first to die. Kim recalls that Edward was drunk when he told him all of this, so he thought he was exaggerating, but seeing the county with his own eyes proved that a prince had ascended. Waking from his flashback, the protagonist, I think that it developed rapidly only in Santo Pop, the center of the county, while pushing through the bushes. The outskirts were basically no different from a slum. Since there is no army to protect the residents, this place is basically a hunting ground for wild animals and creatures. For this reason, it is perfect for monsters like him. It is a place. During the day, they hunt monsters in rivers, waters, and mountains. At night, I exchange monster remains at the Adventurers Guild and use the money to listen to minstrels' music at the tavern. While living like that for 2 weeks, the protagonist, he reflects on how peaceful and idyllic those days of slaughter were to him. Some might say he is wasting time, but this was necessary when he had only 1 year left before returning to the palace. Afterwards, he sets out toward the main character, gains infinite power, and leaves Lord Desam. Sometimes he still had 2 biological parasites that provided excellent samples, and I thank the dinosaur beast. It was all thanks to them that he was able to make the most of his abilities. Unexpectedly, when he ate the dragon and the troll, he gained many abilities in a short period of time, so he had no idea what he could and could not do. Therefore, to analyze the provided samples, he tested his abilities in the wild for 2 weeks to see what he could do with his skills. After leaving the bar, Kim headed to the arranged meeting place, and there, he meets a royal assassin, an agent of the prince. The assassin reports the prince's plan to Kim. After processing the information, Kim realizes that the prince plans to completely replace the lords. He believes that if chaos ensues after the lords are replaced, the monsters will become more powerful, which is good news for him. The assassin asks him when he plans to take action, and I think assassinating this vast riotous city is a piece of cake. So the assassin aims an arrow at the drunk man, who is actually Kim himself. He seems to know that he needs the cooperation of many to pull off this, given how wicked he is. And since many people are with him, he only needs to change his voice. Lying like a dead man, he first changes his voice to that of a saint, imitating a young woman, and shouts at the top of his lungs. It is predicted that the mercenaries killed people and will take over Santo Papiro. Secondly, he changed his voice to that of a middle-aged man who had seen something that should not have been seen on Earth, saying that these gangsters. He says that he can no longer let him roam around. Thirdly, he switches to the voice of the young LAPD investigator who chased him like a dog. And finally, he used the dragon's voice to Pop. It raises awareness by warning the citizens to rise up and reclaim Santo Papiro from the mercenaries. Argyle boasts that he coordinated this matter very well, but it doesn't end there. They contaminate the water supply, amplifying people's fighting instincts. After that, the city was thrown into chaos as citizens attacked the poor mercenaries. Kim enjoys the show while admiring his masterpiece from a bird's eye view. Later at the palace, Prince Edward speaks loudly about the riot in Santo Papiro. The riot began in the city to drive out the mercenaries, but it ultimately fueled the citizens' anger. The citizens began rejecting all outsiders and expelled the mercenaries and refugees. As a result, the citizens, refugees, and mercenaries went berserk and became violent, and Count Papiro was caught in the riot and lost his life. The prince is inwardly pleased and grateful that the power has brought this to a complete end. But cunning Edward crumples a piece of paper in front of the audience and says, "How can such a tragedy happen in my kingdom?" He ordered the amendment of additional provisions in the Territory Administration Act. He announces that even if one claims to be the rightful heir of a lord, if the Pope and King of the Temple deem him unfit, he will be deprived of his territory. He further announces that the number of mercenaries staying in a territory for more than a month must be less than half the number of soldiers stationed there. As everything proceeds according to his plan, Hiju freezes. Meanwhile, Kim enjoys the sight of the burning city, thinking that, just like on Earth, the more people who die, the fewer people will remember him. At that moment, an assassin appears behind him, and our protagonist asks him if he finished the job. Having completed the task, the assassin still needs to figure out Kim's next destination, but our protagonist seems to already know, telling the agent about the recent griffin sightings. It is announced that the territory is called Cavallo Bees. It is explained that the griffin is a creature combining a lion and an eagle, and that he found this information on a treasure map and added that such creatures are his favorites. After that, the assassin left, wishing for Kim Kyung's safe journey, and the protagonist decides to go his own way. Suddenly, he is surprised to see the assassin still standing there, but turns out to be a night girl. It is revealed to us that the griffin is a high-level monster with the head and forelegs of an eagle and the hind legs of a lion. Looking at these beasts, he thinks that the world is majestic yet insecure. Regardless of level, these creatures have completely mismatched upper and lower bodies. It has the most inefficient body structure and, as a result, movements on the ground and in the sky are strange. Nevertheless, people still fear and hold them in high regard, calling them princes of the sky. This is because, despite all their weaknesses, their strength is indisputable. Due to their lion-like behavior, they form prides of about 10. They live. Furthermore, their favorite prey is horses, which explains why attacks on humans are frequent in this region. The protagonist explains to the paladin that Cavalovese is the Griffin's Rocky Mountains, where many people and horses pass through. For this reason, the Adventures and Guild of Cavalovese requested that the Griffins be exterminated or completely destroyed. The excited girl agrees with her master, and Kim adds that they must hunt the Alpha Griffin and its hatchlings, warning that attacks are frequent here and they might not be able to achieve their goal of eliminating every last one. While the man continues speaking, the paladin mutters a quote and the poor. The man nods, wondering what on earth she is talking about. As he walks, Kim falls into thought, confused as to how the holy knight of the goddess Isoi's city follows him around and calls him master. Well, it seems like a long story. The scene is, we go back to the night of the riot in Santo Pop a few days ago. We see the prince's royal assassin kill the Count of Pop and his. He sees someone sneaking out of the castle. While the assassin is escaping, the paladin. Upon discovering him, she suspects that he is sneaking out of the lord's castle and decides to follow him. While following the man, she discovers him meeting someone and witnesses Kim. I remember that he is the man I saw at the bar last night. I overheard the assassin calling the man Kim Kyung. As if terrified, the paladin runs toward him. When the girl calls out to him, Kim Jae-un. Turning around, he discovers the paladin he had met before. Thinking he would immediately eliminate her and destroy all evidence, the protagonist stops even the archer, speculating that the girl is excited and that he is the very knight of knights and a living legend of Kim Jae-un, who set out on a journey with the hero party. Meanwhile, the paladin gazes at him with sparkling eyes and becomes obsessed with the protagonist. Kim believes it is best to let it pass quietly. The knight, holding up a royal badge like the kindest man in the world, asks her to keep it a secret that he is Kim Jae-un and that the person currently on a military mission was here. The paladin agrees on the condition that he will not reveal the secret to anyone if he is accepted as a disciple, but unfortunately, things do not go smoothly. In the reverence, Kim, who is in a predicament, believes the paladin is the city's asymmetric force and a waste of military power. To reduce it, he reminds himself that he is always being being tracked by magic. To make matters worse, according to the assassin, if the paladin is killed, the tracking magic transfers to the attacker. In other words, it means that if he eliminates the witness, he becomes a wanted man in the city of the goddess. So he tried to make her leave by giving her a grueling task, like digging a cave silently with bare hands. Meanwhile, the paladin easily deals with the character. After completing the task, Kim sighs, fed up with her stubbornness. Later, when the paladin takes up a spot in the cave, he tells her about the griffin's habit of bringing food back to the nest. He explains that because of this, they will have to fight on the rocky mountain. As the girl respects her master and thinks he is too wise, Kim tells her that they can gain the upper hand by ambushing and waiting instead of chasing them. Likewise, he reflects on how he underestimated the paladin's physical capabilities, attempting to clear a cave of this size with bare hands. At that moment, the girl spots a griffin gliding toward its nest, escorted by several other griffins and carrying horse meat in its beak. When she asks her master what she should do, he instructs her to go ahead. She happily accepts his command, believing he is testing her skills. Nervous, with a determined expression, the paladin picks up his sword and jumps out of the cave to fight the griffin. However, while she warns this filthy bastard, the beast grabs her face with its claws. While Kim shakes her head in disappointment, the paladin finally returns to the cave and, with blood dripping from his sword, happily reports to his master that he has completed the test. With a look of complete disgust at her, he says that her performance was truly terrible. He adds an evaluation of her technique based on his own judgment, pointing out that her swing was weak because she could not keep gripping the sword tightly for fear of it breaking. Furthermore, her judgment was slowed because she habitually checked the condition of her sword after an attack. And with all her attention focused on the sword, her magic was slow and inaccurate. Upon hearing such remarks about her skills, the paladin began to slump, thinking that it was exactly the same criticism he had heard from his instructor in the city, the one he respected. She is greatly shocked when she is forced to face reality once again by her teacher. Then, Kim suggests that the girl throw away the sword, asserting that it would be better. As soon as he heard this, the paladin looked dejected and asked himself if he was really that useless and unqualified to be a knight. Just then, he orders them to throw down their swords in a loud and clear voice. While obeying his command, the paladin agonizes, worrying whether being told to cast aside his sword means to use his bare fists instead. After that, Kim stood up and informed about another flock of griffins on the opposite ridge, and he orders them to follow him to demonstrate his combat skills. In doing so, he easily catches the griffin with his bare hands. This shocks the paladin. Kim, a paladin killing a griffin with bare hands without any weapons. The girl is in shock, wondering what kind of fighting style this is. He believes there is nothing special about the paladin's combat skills. This girl uses a sword as her primary weapon, but her swordsmanship is not like that of a warrior. She uses empty magic alongside her sword, but she lacks the firepower and technique of the prince. Thanks to body modifications, her physical abilities are outstanding. However, they still fall short compared to the Holy Order. Overall, the paladin possesses the characteristics of a hero party, but failed to turn any of these characteristics into their own strengths. Like a griffin that possesses the characteristics of both an eagle and a lion, but has become completely useless when combined. Although this girl might not be able to stop the human army, if she had accompanied the warrior, she would have died long before reaching the castle. However, that is precisely why she is worth teaching, as the disciple Kim accepted because he could not welcome her. However, I changed my mind after watching her fight earlier. Paladin Pure Creed is like himself. Since she was a type of monster, he now became genuinely interested in teaching her. Meanwhile, Kim sees more than 10 griffins flying toward him and decides to fight them all at once, thinking it will be easier to provoke them. He rummaged through his coat and found a small pocket, which was grand. It appears to be a magical pouch created by a high-ranking space mage of the Kingdom of Canton. Although it looks small on the outside, it has an enormous capacity inside. The owner can put personal belongings in and take them out at will. Knowing that griffins like horse meat, he takes out a piece of horse meat he had swiped from the griffin the girl killed. Let's lure them with the horse meat in front of them. The griffins drool at the sight of the mouth-watering meat and approach him. He imitates the form and movement of animals. It explains that there are known Chinese martial arts. Kim had the opportunity to learn it once while in China. He thought that transforming into various animals would make him stronger, but he quit after a short time. Even if one could mimic other animals, martial arts still required the use of a human form. As someone who actually uses animal body parts, this does not help him. He did not. He thought it was the most useless time in his life because it was developed to use limited power efficiently. Infinite. As a man of power, it is merely a foothold to him. He has no need for such techniques because his fighting style involves destroying enemies with pure force. As the griffin approached him, he grabbed the fire and pierced his troll hand, but he regenerated his hand in the blink of of an eye and the griffin his. He mutters that one should consider it an honor to have become the first large creature for the experiment. Then, as he struck the griffin with all his might and knocked it down, blood splattered everywhere. In Stuck Pit, the demons that were eaten included not only fishmen but also synthetic creatures that were arthropods. Because of this, the dog's forelegs are now interchangeable with his body. The arthropod can deliver a punch with a force 2,500 times its own body weight and possesses the power to kill even a giant monster. He laughs creepily and wonders what he will experiment with next. Thinking of the lizard's ability to shoot blood from its eyes, Honey combines it with seeing. The girl, a paladin with only pure violence, without skill or artifice. I witness a brutal fight that is completely different from the usual fighting style. Seeing Kim fight so ruthlessly, her heart races, and the years of training she spent in Great Meteor City feel meaningless. She realizes that Kim does not need to follow the basic principles of martial arts because he has the strength to tear a bird apart with his bare hands. Since he possesses super regenerative abilities, he does not need to dodge. And if an enemy has strong defenses, he simply crushes their body along with their useless defensive techniques. This leads her to ponder whether she, too, can fight like him, or if she can cast aside the sword that seems to weaken her and unleash her inner potential to the fullest by following her instincts. However, she soon regains her composure and reminds herself that she is a holy knight, a faithful servant of the goddess, and a representative of her holy city. As a knight and a holy knight, she cannot tolerate being swept away by impulse. Meanwhile, Him finishes this and approaches her, asking if she enjoyed the show. When he asks for her thoughts on it, the girl flinches. She cannot answer immediately because she was unable to meet him. When she didn't answer, he noticed she was hesitating and said that there was no need to answer right away. She calls him master and assumes that he is talking about her. 3 days later, after clearing out all the griffins at the location mentioned on the map, the two decided to go down. We decide and the girl's heartbeat speeds up and you can see the blood vessels on the back of your hand dispersing. That place is Santo Cavalova's Adventurer. It seems like a guild and the hourly rate of the ID card. The person written as Adventurer Jedi is none other than Kim. The guild employee knows what he will say, yet no matter how much he complains, he cannot withdraw Yurio and the scheme to subjugate the griffin. Tell him clearly that you were ordered to hand it over to another party. In the next scene, Kim appears, having moved to Jegu, a 27-year-old hourly adventurer and member of the Santo Cavalova Guild, in order to travel freely. At the guild counter, he confirms that he has just heard the order to hand over the operation to defeat Griffin to someone else, and wonders how such a thing is possible. The woman says it is an order, which piques Kim's curiosity, so he ordered her. He asks about the person, but the woman refuses to tell him anything more, clearly stating that she cannot talk about it. He does so. Upon hearing this, he concludes that there is a fellow stealing the labors of the adventurers at the Santo Cavalova Adventurers Guild, and that a guild employee is an accomplice. Threatening the employee, he says it would be amusing if rumors about this guild spread to other regions. He adds that while he won't be the one spreading them, his tongue tends to loosen when he drinks a little. Hearing this, the employee becomes angry, glares at him, and tells him to know his place. The woman should wonder how an adventurer of such a low rank dares to threaten a great and powerful guild master, and that Kim thinks that there is no way an ACHA like himself would meet an hourly adventurer. To her, Kim, realizing that the one who gave the order was the guild master, told her that he had no intention of meeting him and saw her wrist. When she catches him, she thinks he is flirting. A woman revealing that she has a fiancé. Suddenly, the sound of bones being crushed is heard, and she screams as the cruel man breaks her hand. The scene shifts to Hunryo Aventros, the only legendary adventurer to reach SSS rank and the guild master of the Cavalova Guild. 25 years ago, this man had many heroic stories at the time. It was the theory of the hero party that succeeded in giving birth and defeating the Demon King. They were each given a wish, just as it was given to monsters and villains. He returned from Inmu and became the guild master. Afterwards, he raised his professional ideals for 20 years and brought overwhelming influence and authority. Everything was possible thanks to the power granted to him, namely political power. Hunryo was able to construct this narrative thanks to his immense influence over the Adventurers Guild. However, there were no adventurers in this hero party because the king took action before Hunryo could withdraw his hand from the kingdom. As a result, the second prince became a hero, and now people praise the symbol of the crown instead of the symbol of freedom. He said that he had to create a hero at the Adventurers Guild before it was too late to raise the status of adventurers. He was under pressure in his thoughts. His promising son, Aventuras of Horu, is arguing with his father, saying that stealing credit from others makes even becoming a hero meaningless. His father tells him to be wise and explains that he is not doing it out of love. He wants to raise a hero. He reminds him that he is the son of the adventurer who helped the hero kill the Demon King 25 years ago. Father adds adds that since the future of all adventurers depends on whether he becomes a hero, there is a need to add a story to his extraordinary background. A scream while they were talking. Hearing his fiancée's voice, Horu immediately rushes over, but finds her collapsed on the floor with a broken wrist. Terrified, enraged, Horu fiercely swings his sword at him, but he grabs his weapon and strangles him. Holding a broken sword in his other hand, he violently swings the sword wrapped around his head. Shocked by the sight, Hanryo screams as he witnesses his son being brutally murdered. Kim does not flinch and asks if he is the guild master, introducing himself as the adventurer Shigeum Jejai. The adventurer who gave him the sword recognizes him and apologizes for trying to steal his credit, but Kim listens to the apology and turns away. Horrified by Kim's cold attitude, Hanryo shouts that he beat the guild members, broke his daughter-in-law's arm, and took his son's life. He just pointed at the girl. He said that he made it happen because she refused to bring the guild master. He merely defended himself because another man attacked him. And finally, he killed his son first because the son tried to kill him. With those words, he prepares to leave. Hanryo, on the verge of exploding with rage, shouts at him and asks if that is all he has to say. Thinking that Kim is acting on someone else's orders, he asks for his demands. However, Kim clearly states that he has no interest in this at all and does not care much about having his achievements recognized. Once something becomes his, he cannot tolerate anyone else stealing it without permission. And if he had told me in advance, things would not have turned out this way. With that, Kim leaves, leaving behind a cold excuse, and Hanryo is forced to face the reality of his life. He realizes that he brought all of this upon himself and that everything he did was for his own sake, not for all the adventurers. He regrets that the way he got here was never right and that he forced sacrifices upon others for the sake of future generations. However, that is no longer important because that kid has already destroyed his family and stolen his future. At that time, Hanryo decides to unite guilds such as Kingbird Feathers, Samjum, the Youth of Verdeval, and Cyclone X with the intention of stealing Kim's future. The next scene shows a holy knight lost in thought, reminiscing about her days training in the city of the goddess. As she blew many swords during training, the instructor always took issue with her, and it was concluded that although she possessed physical abilities far superior to others, she could not control them. Deep in thought, she remembered her master saying that if she had been a beast, she would have become the king of the jungle, but as a paladin, she was a failure. She recalls what was clearly said. As those words echo in her mind, the paladin thinks of her mentor, Kim, who taught her how to use power without hesitation. However, since this was the exact opposite of her paladin training, she is confused about whose words to follow. Meanwhile, several men are seen pointing to a place where urgent adventures and rituals appear to be staying. Afterwards, while Kim was walking along the road, when he runs into Hanryo, he says that he has already accepted the apology and asks what is wrong. However, Hanryo, appearing extremely angry, asked if he remembered the young man he had killed, and the young man confesses that he was his son. The grief-stricken father concludes that someone like Kim could never understand the pain of losing a child. Shockingly, he answers that he knows it well. He continues to say that the cruel monster created the most childless fathers after orphans and widows, and that each of them is vowing revenge. While Hanryo is appalled by his audacity, I ask what became of those fathers who were filled with rage and wanted revenge. Then, pointing confidently at himself, he naturally says that he is still alive. At that moment, Hanryo loses his temper and attacks the seemingly defenseless Kim. He draws his sword, calls him an arrogant fool, and charges at him. Holding his sword, Hanryo adds that he has honed his aura for decades, claiming that with this power, he can see even dragon scales like paper. He may be old, but he is the guiding principle of the previous generation's hero party and the world's only S-class adventurer. Showing off his full power, Hanryo swings his sword, aiming straight for Kim's neck. However, this man is unyielding. He kills Hanryo in an instant, sending blood splattering everywhere. Stepping back, Kim notices many people shouting monster and running in the opposite direction. He is startled as they pass him, though it is clear they are not running away from him. Just then, he spots a cold-hearted scholar with blood splattering all over the streets, and the girl sees a paladin standing nearby, blood dripping from his hand. She looks at her master and calls out to him, trembling with fear and tears streaming down her face. Kim leaned against the wall without reacting at all. He takes out a magic pouch and pulls out a large piece of a griffin leg. It regards the food. As she begins to eat, the paladin wipes away her tears and sits beside him. When Kim asks if she would like some meat, she nods. Surprisingly, the paladin starts eating the meat aggressively, and it seems to make her feel better. Meanwhile, the girl eats meat like a starving beast. He looks at the path she is taking, thinking that griffin meat isn't that tasty. Anyway, it is a hybrid monster. After eating the food, the knight confesses to him that while people believe the goddess grants them supernatural powers, they are actually modified humans created through the saints simplified manufacturing process. Thinking that it is not a secret at all, Kim seems to already know this fact because the prince told him before. Trembling, the girl further reveals that the Holy Knights are also subjects of ability experiments for the next saintess. Showing her swollen hand that resembles a troll's, she concludes that it might be the result of one of those experiments. Clenching her fist tightly, the girl says she cannot resist a strange impulse. Speaking, Kim realizes why he felt a strange sense of familiarity when he first met her. It is revealed that Kim had never once thought of even his parents as being of the same kind as himself, and the same went for his disgusting, pig-like older brother. Because of this, he always kept his distance from everyone and kept his abilities a secret. However, strangely enough, he showed his abilities to the paladin without hiding anything, because she was a monster just like himself. Then, Kim recalled how they had wreaked havoc on this place and completely destroyed the Cavalivaz Adventurers Guild along with the guildmaster. Snapping out of his thoughts, he ordered the paladin to get a carriage ticket, stating that he could no longer stay here. When the girl asked where he was going, Kim reassured her that there was some remaining work to be done and it wouldn't take long. As soon as the girl ran to get a ticket, the voice calls for seaweed. It appears to be an assassin who overheard their conversation. Nevertheless, he demands a price from him. The assassin hands him a pocket. Meanwhile, Kim reflects on his suspicion that the Holy Knights on the other side were used as test subjects to create a saintess. There is no concrete evidence. However, the Holy Knight's words confirmed that hypothesis. Then the assassin says that he has provided him with some travel money and a new identity, namely, a 26-year-old 4th-class dragon guard belonging to Almaruaji's Spurs Dragon Guard. As he receives the next person, the assassin asks about his next destination, and Kim replies that he is heading to Santo Canargo. As he leaves as Yongyong for the next person, Kim thinks about Santo Canargo, where he first met Prince Edward. As a secret agent, she is excited at the thought of excluding old acquaintances, including her ex-boyfriend.